Order. Can we start with roll call?
Commissioner Tarnay.
Here.
Vice Chair Hall.
Here.
Commissioner Riley.
Here.
Chair Zabriskie.
Here.
Commissioner Hall.
Oh, Commissioner Gove.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Gove.
Here.
Sorry. Oh, we were out of order.
Okay. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to begin this evening's meeting with general public comments. That means anyone who wants to stand up and speak on a matter that is not on the agenda is welcome to do so for up to 3 minutes. Now, is there anyone who would like to present a public comment on any matter other than the agenda items? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, we'll go ahead and move on to consideration of approval of the minutes. And I'm referring now to the minutes of last month's meeting. Does anyone have any changes or corrections they want to make to last month's, to the minutes of last month's meeting? Okay, hearing none, does anyone have a motion to approve last month's minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 19th.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of or I guess we should just go one by one as we usually do. Susie?
Aye.
Yeah.
I wasn't present.
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. So that the minutes are approved. Now let's move on to the regular meeting. There's 2 items on the agenda, but one of those has been pulled. If I understand correctly, does staff want to just brief us on that?
So that item has been pulled by the property owner who has withdrawn her approval to have the application processed at this time. However, because we did notice that agenda item, then we'll want to open public comment on the fact that it's been withdrawn. So it's a little unusual than what we've done before, but in case anyone from the public was here that wants to comment on the fact that it was withdrawn, can make a public comment.
Thank you, Danielle. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on the, it was agenda item 7.1 for the West End Coffee and Tap zoning clearance? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one requesting to make public comment, I believe we can close this item. Okay. Now we'll move on to the other item on the agenda. This is item 7.2, and if staff will go ahead and get us started.
Thanks, Chair Zabriskie. I thought before Yumi started her presentation that I would do a little bit of background because I had the fortunate benefit of being the project planner for the Rail Yard Master Plan. So since its early inceptions as a plan, obviously that was well before me because it's been a 20-plus year planning effort. But when we really started doing a lot of the work, it was back in 2004 and kind of moving forward from there with the first version of it adopted in 2009 and then amended in 2015. So it's been, it was a long process for the town to go through, but in the scheme of the different types of documents the town has adopted over the years, it was one of the most expeditious and well supported. So in 3 years' time, with over sort of 32 different public meetings, the community got behind the Rail Yard Master Plan as a redevelopment opportunity. As part of that, there was a lot of dialogue about, well, what should go within the Rail Yard Master Plan area, and there was some direction provided within the downtown specific plan. So that served as a basis, and then the community obviously kind of weighed in on different aspects of that, from densities to housing types to recreation, community benefits, all those things. And the movie theater was one of the uses that over time continued to come up, that although the downtown specific plan talked about the possibility of an ice rink, you know, would we want to move the balloon track, not move the balloon track? What does that look like? As the community really started to dig into what creates a successful downtown, having some sort of opportunity for public interaction, like a movie theater, was there was a lot of interest for it. So what you see in the staff report is some description about how this really functions somewhat as a community use. Although you wouldn't normally say that someone who's coming in and proposing a business like a movie theater is a community use. With the 09 master plan, the public spaces and kind of the public interaction opportunities looked more like your traditional kind of public parks, plazas, some opportunities for civic buildings. But as the dialogue kind of continued through that, the movie theater continued to be really the one civic use that people saw as an opportunity to kind of cross all income types, create opportunities for community interaction, and more functionally would be like a community center than a true kind of standalone business. So I wanted to add that as a little bit of background before Yumi did her presentation, because I think it is a little bit different. We do have a development agreement that covers the Rail Yard Master Plan area. And within the development agreement, there is some context that kind of provides the background for that says that we really treat this sort of as a community benefit, a community use within the master plan area versus a standalone business that's coming in and proposing to add a new building. So I think it's good perspective to have. And if you have more questions as we kind of go through this, feel free to ask, since some of that knowledge is probably still stuck up in there. But I'll let Yumi continue with her presentation.
Good evening. The Truckee Art House project is located, or proposed to be located, in downtown in the Rail Yard. It's located right next to the southeast of the new Church Street roundabout. Its current address is on Church Street, and its future address, which we have not yet actually applied to it, is on Truckee Way, which is the north to south leg of the roundabout. This is the approved tentative map for the Rail Yard. The proposed art house is located right here. The roundabout, as you can see, kind of faded back here. And then the approved artist lofts is located directly to the east of the Truckee Art House. And then, as you know, there's an approved grocery store within the balloon track, along with some parking. The zoning for this site is Downtown Master Plan, and the general plan designation is Downtown Specific Plan Area. And then within that, there's the Rail Yard Master Plan, and as Danielle noted, there's the Truckee Art House is located in the downtown extension zone, which is identified within the master plan as a physical extension of the commercial shops, restaurants, and lodging existing along Commercial Row. It's supposed to complement the existing Main Street mixed commercial character and new retail, office, entertainment, and residential of its own. It's the greatest intensity of all of the rail yard master plan areas. There's also the Trout Creek area, industrial heritage, and then open space within the master plan. As Danielle noted, while the movie theater is identified as a community benefit within the development agreement, there is still an opportunity for a civic use within the balloon track. So that is still identified, and that doesn't necessarily, the movie theater does not constitute a civic use in the North Balloon. The final map is currently being created, so there isn't actually a parcel for this particular use, but it is very close to being recorded, hopefully by the end of this week, maybe early next week. But the parcel, we reviewed the project based on the parcel that we anticipated to be recorded. So as you can see from this, this is the art house, and the artist loft is to the right, and then a future use will be located to the south of this. But we identified that this parcel 2 is about 0.33 acres, and we used these particular lines and access easements as part of our review tonight. So the project is essentially 3 theaters, one with 199 seats, one with 95 seats, and one with 84 seats, for a total of 378 seats. It has a floor area of 12,130 square feet and has 100% site coverage, which are all allowed within the development agreement and the rail yard master plan. So tonight, to achieve this project, the applicants are requesting a zoning clearance, which is identified in the rail yard master plan for projects less than 15,000 square feet, which is different from our development code, which has a threshold of 7,500 square feet. And it's also a zoning clearance for the theater and meeting hall use, which is a permitted use within the downtown extension district, as is the bar and drinking establishment for a beer and wine establishment. They're also requesting a minor use permit for encroachments of the marquee sign into the public utility easement and access easement on Truckee Way, so the western side of the property. A minor exception, which is a minor deviation from the street wall articulation requirement of the rail yard master plan, which is a specific requirement that's only in the rail yard master plan and not within our development agreement. And then a sign plan for a marquee sign, projecting sign, and display signs. So the applicants have stated that they are anticipating it to be a major motion picture cinema during the peak seasons, and during the shoulder seasons they would have flexible programming, which would include independent films, local films, hosting live music performances, and other local performances. They would open up the mezzanine and the lobby to all for snacks and drinks, including beer and wine. So as you can see, this is Truckee Way on the west side. This is the marquee sign that encroaches on the utility easement. The concessions and kitchen are located within the lobby area. And then there's auditoriums here, here, and here, and then with a green room located to the north of the largest auditorium to provide opportunities for performing arts. As you can see on the second floor, there's also a mezzanine that overlooks the lobby, and then an office and storage area. And then this area above, right here, is the projection room. So why is Planning Commission reviewing this project today? Today, you're looking for consistency with overall design objectives of the design guidelines and the character of downtown Truckee, ensuring consistency with the density and intensity identified within the rail yard master plan, which is called the MAD, which is the maximum allowed development, and then determining consistency with the general plan, master plan, and all other plans. And then in general, zoning clearances and minor use permits could be reviewed at the zoning administrator level. However, because this is a big community interest and it was a big item that was discussed as part of our development agreement, the applicants agreed to bring this to Planning Commission to bring it into the public forum for discussion. As Danielle noted, there is a development agreement that was approved as part of the rail yard master plan, and it identified the theater as a desired use, along with a community use and a grocery store within the rail yard area. The the development agreement identifies explicitly what is required. It identifies that there should be 3 movie screens, one of which has 200 seats with a multifunctional space used for lectures and live performances. A joint use agreement is required to be entered into with the town for sponsored and sanctioned events, for town-sponsored and sanctioned events. And then the other 2 screens were required to have at least 50 seats each. As part of that development agreement, the town also agreed to provide $250,000 to the theater operator for theater equipment and interior furnishings, and then an additional $50,000 per year for 5 years once the theater gets into operation to help subsidize the cost of theater operations. Before we get into the project review, I did want to note that there was a condition that was missing from your staff report and your resolution to identify exactly what the development agreement required for the joint use agreement. So tonight, staff is proposing that we add this condition to the resolution, which mimics the language within the development agreement that requires that joint use agreement be entered into with the town. So tonight, there are a few topics for consideration that we've identified within your staff report. The 2 main items that I'm going to discuss today are architecture and signs. There's also going to be a brief discussion on consistency with the affordable housing and parking requirements of the rail yard master plan. And then these last 2 items, the street articulation and development agreement, performing arts component, while that's something you can consider, I'm not particularly going to go into that topic unless, as the discussion evolves, that's something you would like to see. So architecture and design is one of the key components that staff has identified for Planning Commission's consideration. It's a key consideration within the town's community character element of the general plan, and it's a key component within the rail yard master plan design guidelines. So this is the original project that was submitted to the town. It identifies, it shows, this is the north elevation, which is primarily the elevation we'll talk about tonight. This was also the submittal that was reviewed by our Architectural Review Committee, which our Architecture Review Committee is generally made up of 3 local architects that are experienced in Truckee architecture. They're volunteers, and it's not the same architect group every time. Sometimes it changes depending on availability and interest in the project. Their goal is to provide feedback to staff and to the Planning Commission because they are the experts in their field. So the topics they discussed as part of this architecture review in December was the challenges because of its location and use. A theater use by nature has to have large blank walls to accommodate dark theaters for watching movies. The location on the corner with 3 sides that are open to the public right-of-way is also a challenge, since if it was more nested within a block, it would be difficult. It would be easier to hide at least a couple sides. The architecture review also noted that this should be a people place, since it's a gateway to our town and our rail yard area. They talked a lot about transparency on the west elevation, that the transparency on the west elevation was good, but it would be great to bring that around to the north elevation. And then they talked about the north elevation being treated as the back of house and being a little busy with the trash enclosure and the transformer. They wanted to bring materials from the front around the building, including on the north elevation. And they wanted to warm up the alley. They also talked about art, and they thought art would be great on this building, but also wanted to ensure that the architecture could stand on its own. So based on that review by ARC, the applicants returned with a new project proposal. So they brought forward this design, which I'll get into a little bit, but I think that the main component that is no longer in the current proposal is this pixelated CMU that they proposed after the architecture review. But they have since removed that. They've also, so this is the new design. It's similar to the pixelated view. It just doesn't have, obviously they removed the pixelation. And this is the west elevation towards the roundabout. And then this is the north elevation. So we could talk about the exact changes that they showed by looking at the proposed and the initial submittal side by side. So the items that they changed based on our ARC's input was to include this transparency on this door on the boxcar of the kitchen, and then the window above to create more transparency. And this door is slightly different, or this wall, I suppose. And then they moved the emergency exit for the westernmost auditorium farther west to consolidate it with the garbage enclosure. And then they increased the massing of the garbage enclosure to at least embrace it as an architecture feature within the north elevation. And they also added movie posters with the intent that they would display old historic movie posters on the north elevation. And then they added some landscaping planters. They originally proposed to do public art on the north elevation, but since removed that due to financial reasons. But they are interested in the possibility of doing public art on the north side. This shows the alley view that also has changed. This is the initial submittal. They added some pedestrian level material changes, including an enhancement of the canopy and a change of material with landscaping and bike racks on the elevation to help warm it up and to address architecture review's comment to find ways to make it a more inviting alley. And this is the material sample board, which we don't have to go into right now, and that could just be there for discussion purposes. The Rail Yard Master Plan also identifies public art and encourages public art within the area. Public art provides visitors and residents of Truckee with a visual landmark, large or small, that inspires a sense of identity, pride, and creativity. That's language directly out of the Rail Yard Master Plan. And with these two murals, and there are a couple more that have been seen within town, there is a character of murals within our community that bring warmth and interest and creativity to our community. The applicants have stated that they are interested in public art, but can't necessarily fund that at the moment. And they are at the moment cannot fund for additional architectural cladding to the north and east side of the building. Staff's concerns are those north and east sides of the buildings, and that is the main consideration that staff believes should be part of your review today, among other topics that you decide are necessary to discuss. But architecture is a key component to our Truckee's character, and the Church Street is evolving into more of a back-of-house design with the artist lofts and with some developments within the balloon track, but staff believes that art or additional architectural features could enhance that Church Street elevation. And then we wanted to ensure that that gateway corner, which is at the roundabout, would be more interesting and more representative of the Truckee community. So condition number 18 requires, in order to meet the intent of the design guidelines, staff is identifying that there are three options that the applicants can consider. They could include architectural cladding or materials onto the north and east side of the elevations, require that they fund and install public art, and then, or the third option is, since the town council has identified public art as an identified desire within the town and may consider funding for public art, if the applicants chose to offer an easement to the town and the town accepted that easement, that could meet to install public art or some material on the north and east sides of the elevations of the building. Staff believes that could meet the intent of the architectural design guidelines of the Rail Yard Master Plan. So that's one of the key conditions that we'll probably be discussing tonight. And while we don't have to go through the exact language, we do have it here for discussion. Additionally, staff's concerns are if this project ceases operation in the near future, or in the future, that there is a building that exists in our town that functions for a theater but may not meet the requirements of the architectural design guidelines for any other use that is not necessarily identified as a community priority. So we're also including language in here that says any new exterior modifications to the building shall be required to return to architecture review and to planning commission for review and approval. And that's new language that's not currently in your staff report. The second major item that we'll be discussing today is signs. The applicants are proposing a marquee sign, a blade sign, which is a projecting sign that's perpendicular to the face of the building, and then illuminated posters on the front of the building. The projecting sign that they're proposing here, which is made of Core 10 metal with cutouts for acrylic, that is 88 square feet and approximately 6 feet above the height of the structure. That's what they're proposing. And then there's the marquee sign, which is a standard movie theater sign that's pretty iconic for a movie theater that identifies acts and shows that are being shown at the movie theater. And that marquee sign is 165 square feet. So, and then they're proposing 3 display signs, which includes these on the north elevation. There's 4 posters proposed, well, 4 in one display sign and 3 in another display sign for a 50 square foot sign to the right and then a 65 square foot sign to the left, along with a 65 square foot display sign on the alley elevation to help bring the scale down of the building. What's not in your staff report today is illuminated posters, which were identified on the elevations, but were not, the details of those illuminated display boxes were not actually provided within the application. They're approximately 4 by 3, about 12 square feet each, and they would be applied to the storefront of the west elevation. So that's also should be included within your sign plan review. So this is the matrix that's within your staff report that identifies the sign plan parameters. I would note that the rail yard master plan identifies that the master developer is required to come in before any building permit is issued to do a sign plan for that downtown extension or any other district within the rail yard master plan. They have not yet done that, but whatever is approved here can be incorporated into a future rail yard master plan sign program for the downtown extension district if the planning commission finds that appropriate. I've also identified within this matrix what is required in our development code. The project is not beholden to the development code at the moment, so that this is just here for informational purposes for you to understand whether or not this would be allowed within any other zone in our community. So mostly the questions for the signs are, do you think it's appropriate for this use and building? I noted that I added some preliminary language about the 4 illuminated posters on the west elevation. That could be changed by planning commission. And then requirements that the materials and design for all the display signs should be reviewed by the community development director prior to any, I think below here it says building permit issuance, or building permit issuance, yes. And then staff is recommending the removal of one of the display signs, regardless, neither one is identified, but one of the display signs on the north elevation to reduce the busyness of the north elevation, which was identified within the Architecture Review Committee's review. And then within that same condition that was discussed earlier about exterior modifications, staff has included a recommendation within your staff report that requires that the marquee sign, projecting sign, and display signs, which are all specific to a theater use, should be removed if the theater operation ceases. So now I'll talk about affordable housing, which the Rail Yard Master Plan has a Rail Yard Affordable Housing Plan, a RUP, which identifies that the affordable housing requirements for a theater should be determined by the review authority. So based on the description by the applicants on the amount of staff they'll have, the hours of operation, staff determined based on the hours worked that approximately 7.3 full-time equivalent employees would be generated by this project. That's in line with what the applicants have also determined based on their own individual math calculations. The rail yard master plan uses our old workforce housing requirements, which requires that anything that generates over seven full-time equivalent employees, but less than 20, is required to be divided by 28. So the workforce housing requirement for this particular project is approximately 26%, which would mean that there are two options for the art house to move forward with this project. They could either pay 26.1% of the in lieu fee, the current in lieu fee, which would be about $25,000, or they could ask the master developer of the rail yard to allow them to use the artist lofts credits, which is an affordable housing project that would then allow one of those units to be allocated to the project. They would then be required to submit something like this matrix to the right, which shows how the 77 affordable housing units within the Truckee Art House are allocated. Right now, if the grocery store moves forward with the project as proposed, they would be using 10 of those units, so they would have 66 remaining, and then the Truckee Art House would be allowed to use 1. So with this condition of approval, staff believes that they are in compliance with the rail yard affordable housing plan. As for parking, along with the affordable housing plan, there was a parking management plan that was incorporated into the development agreement, which the idea with that is that it's shared parking. It's a park once philosophy where the entirety of the rail yard master plan parking, of which phase 1 has been built, is kind of a shopping center that shares all of that parking together. We still determine how much parking is allocated to each business or to each building, and based on the rail yard parking management plan, the parking requirements is 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet of development for any other use other than a residential or hotel use. With that, that'd be 36 units that are required for the art house. And based on the recent parking count of the existing infrastructure that's out there, there are 240 existing spaces, both in parking lots and on street, of which 57 are allocated to what was previously known as the Beacon lot. And then we backed out what the artist lofts would be required to have for their project. So with that, there's 102 remaining spaces. So there's room for the Truckee Art House to meet their parking demand. As I stated, there's other items that we could talk about tonight. Those are essentially the topics I'll be discussing as part of this presentation, but we can always go back and discuss some more about the other topics, or these topics even. Staff found that the project is consistent with the Rail Yard Master Plan EIR, which was certified in 2009. So environmental review was completed under that original EIR. And we've received multiple public comments, which included quite a bit of support for the project, concern regarding parking and infrastructure, and then concern regarding the architecture. And then there was one public comment that was concerned about the alcohol use that is proposed within the Truckee Art House. So tonight, staff's recommendation is to adopt Resolution 2019-04 with amendments that were identified within this staff report, and then determine the project exempt or consistent with the previous EIR, approve a zoning clearance, minor use permit, a minor exception, and a sign plan. So that's all I have for this presentation. The applicants are here to give a presentation as well.
Thank you, Yumi. Now we'll go to the applicant's presentation, and based on our practice, we will then follow with public comments. So if we have the applicant here, can they go ahead and make their presentation?
Yumi, you nailed it. Nice work.
Do I start it?
And could you also identify yourself when you start out?
Yeah. Good evening. I'm Melissa Sigg, and this is my husband, Stephen Sigg. A little bit about us. We're longtime locals. I've moved to Tahoe in 2001, and Sig has been here since he was 19, so we'll just leave it at that. And we are raising our family here, and I am very passionate about Tahoe and Truckee, and I just love it here. We started the Tahoe Art House and Cinema in September 2014, and the reason we started it is Sig has been a longtime filmmaker, started off as an action sports filmmaker and then expanded into other types of movies, and he long had a dream of owning a movie theater in Tahoe. And we always thought it was a dream. But then when the Cobblestone Cinema, which had been there for about 30 years, lost its lease, it looked like it could become a reality. And we teamed up with our partner, Mark Gogolewski, who is not here tonight. And the three of us also had a dream of revitalizing Tahoe City and injecting more life into the town. So we opened the theater in September 2014. So we've been operating for 4.5 years. And we've learned a lot in that time. And in addition, as Yumi said in her presentation, I would say about 80% of what we do is major motion pictures, and especially during the peak tourist times, winter and summer, we tend to show just nonstop blockbusters. But then community is very important to us, and every time I get an email or phone call about a community member who's asking if they can do this independent film, show their film, do a performance, we try to honor that. If we think it's quality and we can fit in our schedule, we always try to make it work. Let's see. Do I point it here? Over here. There we go. So here's an example of posters of some of the non-traditional movies we've done. And also I feel one reason we've been successful is I feel like we really know our community and what they're passionate about and what they want to see. A lot of that does evolve around the outdoors and action sports. So some of these movies we've shown is surfing movies, the TGR Kissed by God, a lot of skiing movies. We've had Jeremy Jones speak at our theater multiple times presenting his films. That's one thing we love to do, is have athletes or filmmakers present the films. And every year we've had an Academy Awards party it's like watching the Super Bowl, a fun community way to watch the Academy Awards. So it's really important to us. This is something we just did a few weeks ago, which was a performance unlike anything we've ever seen before. It was a local playwright, and his wife started Tahoe Flow Arts. This was called Mountains Are Pretty, and we did 2 shows. They had live music, a 6-piece band. It was a play along with flow arts and with singing. We had Candy from Metal Echo, and it sold out both nights. 140 people Saturday night, 140 people Sunday. It was very well received, completely original. You could not see anything like this anywhere else, and we were very proud to show this, and it kind of is indicative of our community support. This is I don't know if everyone here has been to the Tahoe City Art House, but this is our lobby. And this is
small.
Yeah, it's small. But this is an old picture, and the Palada was actually a soccer team, a youth soccer team, approached us about showing Palada was a soccer movie and using it as a fundraiser, and we did that. We do a lot of that, movies as fundraisers, when community groups approach us. This is just some of the newspapers we've been in. So we have made a mark, and we're trying to. And this was, you were going to take it from here?
Oh, you're throwing it at me.
Oh, one more thing. Why did we want to do Truckee? So Truckee doesn't have a movie theater, and we feel this is sorely missing. And many people would come to us saying, when are you opening up in Truckee? We need a movie theater in Truckee. Truckee is a much bigger town than Tahoe City, and I would say it's more vibrant. There's more full-time residents here than Tahoe City. So Truckee really needs a theater. So when Sig read about the rail yard and the need for a movie theater, he out of the blue called Rick Holiday. And we also, when we heard that originally they wanted to do an 8-screen movie theater, we were like, that sounds a little too much for Truckee. We're like, what are you doing with that? So we just out of the blue cold called Rick Holiday, and that is how this conversation started. And that was probably 3 years ago. So I will let Sig talk about our inspiration. I just want to touch on one more thing. We do know the north walls are probably going to be the crux of the talk tonight. We are very supportive of public art. That is our preferred solution. We think public art can create placemaking for Truckee, can make this a vibrant place that people go to. They will purposely walk down that side of the street to see the public art, take pictures of it, post it on their social media. So we think it's a great opportunity, and we are happy to supply the canvas.
How are we doing on time? Good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Truckee Art House and Cinema. It's good to see you. Thanks, Melissa. So, why this design? Why did we come up with this? Well, these were the images that we gave our design team. These were the things that were the archetypes of what we wanted to do with the Truckee Art House. We want to celebrate the history, yet the rail yard project is the new downtown in many respects. So there has to be a modern type to that too. So this was the inspiration. The hikers there, if you're not familiar, that's a scene out of Charlie Chaplin's film Gold Rush, which is iconic in itself. It was a huge production back in the day, and that is actually a mural that we'll have inside in the lobby. And so these are very important things to the fabric of what the Truckee Art House should be in our interpretation. One of the main things, and Yumi said it, you did a great job presenting everything about the Truckee Art House. This is a very smart and lean concept. We're under great pressure financially to make this successful. We're a mom and pop shop. We only have a set amount of money, and we cannot go over that budget. And it's very, very important that everyone realizes that, because we want this to be successful. If it's not successful, then we just kind of have a building sitting there, and everyone's already thinking about, you got to take the signs down when you change use. But that's not why we're here. We're here to be successful. And when I first came to Rick Holiday and I said, hey man, what are you guys doing? It was in this room, and it was broadcast to the public that this was a dilemma. And we don't look at this as a dilemma. And it's been kind of rooted in a dilemma. And now the town is relatively behind us, and I see it as an opportunity. And I think we need to get to the opportunity and not look at it as a dilemma. We have vetted everything to the master plan. Everything. We have jumped over every hurdle, through every hoop. We've tweaked our design to a certain degree. It's put us over budget at this point, but we're willing to do that. And it's so cool to see that Truckee is really concerned about these north walls. It means people are concerned about what's happening, but we cannot make everybody happy. There are certain things that we just can't do financially. We have to have the heart and soulers within the Truckee Art House. And those walls, unfortunately, they're just something that we're going to all have to deal with. Public art is the way to deal with it. We instigated that conversation, and we're excited about that conversation. But we cannot be mandated that it all falls on us if that conversation turns out that they don't want public art here in Truckee. I think it's actually going to go the other way. So is it number 18, paragraph 1, 2, and 3? I'll let Brett take over from there. Brett should take over at this point. But thanks everybody. This is Brett Smith, our architect.
Thanks, Sig. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to spend a few minutes focusing on a brief introduction to the context for the project, and then I'll describe the design strategies that we used. And I apologize for some overlap with Yumi. There'll be a few points where we overlap. As you know, this project is preceded by the 20-year history of the rail yard project, and this summer we saw some big changes get underway east of Commercial Row. This is a map of the Truckee rail yard as it was approved by the town in 2016. The theater is a small piece of the rail yard, so we're going to zoom in to the downtown extension district that is west of the balloon track here. And then this is the theater site. This is located at the intersection of Truckee Way and Church Street at the roundabout. This is the only site that was made available for the theater. We did not have a choice in the site. And this project is being developed by the operators, not a developer. This is not a mixed-use project. It's a theater-specific project. Another important context is the Truckee Development Code and the Rail Yard Master Plan. And the master plan includes 16 development standards and 54 design guidelines that govern the design of buildings in the district. We believe that the proposed project meets the intent and spirit of these design guidelines. So let's take a closer look at the theater site. The proposed theater is here in gray. The existing houses are across this, Church Street to the north. The artist loft is across the pedestrian alley to the east. There's future development to the south, completing the block that the Art House Theater is on, and there's also future development across Truckee Way. Most people will approach the theater from Donner Pass Road and the parking to the south. All that parking is on between Donner Pass Road and the railroad tracks. There's an important distinction made between the streets in the master plan. The Truckee Way and Donner Pass Road are both primary streets, and Church Street is a secondary street. Now I'll describe the design strategies that we used. This is the main.
Super far away.
Sorry. This is the main level floor plan. So the entrance to the lobby is off of Truckee Way. This is the only primary street that's adjacent to the site. There are 3 auditoriums. They're arranged in an L, with the largest auditorium tucked in the back behind the building to the south. The 2 smaller auditoriums are staggered on the curved property line and vary in height to break up the mass of the building. The lobby opens to the street and the roundabout with large windows inviting the community in. This is the upper level plan. It includes a public mezzanine above the lobby. And this is a rendering of the theater from the roundabout. The entry has a large sheltering marquee canopy opening into a welcoming lobby with bar and concessions, room for exhibition and events, and plenty of space for hanging out. Here I'll also describe the materials. Above is reclaimed corrugated metal from the rail building that was demolished on the site. Weathered steel for the blade sign and the marquee details. The kitchen is weathered wood and steel inspired by the rail car at Hilltop. And the auditoriums are CMU. This is the view from inside of the lobby looking north with the concessions and bar, the kitchen and the rail car. It has storage that is underneath the auditorium seating adjacent to it. The projection room and mezzanine are above. And this is the view from Truckee Way, north of the roundabout. As Yumi described, we made several modifications to the north and east elevations based on the feedback from the Architectural Review Committee. These included reconfiguring the trash enclosure to create a vertical volume to further break down the massing, and adding pedestrian scale elements. Examples of those are the boxcar door with the transparency there, and the screening behind the transformer and around the exit. Public art has been part of the discussion with the town from the beginning, but it has never been in the budget for the theater. This team is in full support of public art on the auditorium walls, and we're willing to grant an easement to the town for public art as part of this application. This is the view of the pedestrian alley from Church Street. And this is the view that people will have as they walk to the theater from the parking and businesses on Donner Pass Road. And this is the view of the theater from across Truckee Way. We ask that the Planning Commission approve the Truckee Art House Theater with a revision to the proposed Condition 18, only requiring that the Truckee Art House offer an easement or license to the town for public art on the auditorium walls. Thank you for your consideration.
Before we go to public comment, I expect we'll have questions for the applicant. If you don't mind, I'd like to hold off that questioning until we hear from the public. Okay, I'm seeing nods from all the representatives for the applicant. Okay, now we're going to go to public comment. Can I get an indication by raised hands how many people are planning to provide comment? Okay, thank you. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. There'll be a little buzzer or a little ringer that'll go off if you're at 3 minutes. Okay, if those who want to provide public comment would line up against the far wall, and we'll take you in the order in which you line up. When you step up to the microphone, would you make sure the little red light is on where the microphone is so that you'll be recorded? And also, would you begin by stating your name? Okay, why don't we go ahead and start with the first public speaker.
Hi, my name is John Pugh, and we have a little presentation here too. I've known the SIGs for a while now, and I also was approached by Rick Holiday a long time ago as endorsing this project and being a public art advocate. And they've actually been so kind to commission me to come up with some concepts. But I wanted to share with you today a couple possibilities of what could happen with this wall, because I think this is not only an opportunity to hide the walls, but to create a public art attraction, a placemaking type thing that embraces the heritage of Truckee. And I've been living in Truckee for over 12 years right now, so I'm very interested in leaving a historical mark here as opposed to all the other places that I've been doing projects. Maybe you've seen this one before. This is up at Chico State. This is one of the first projects that I did. I'm not sure if I'm... There we go. So this is just the process of doing a mural and what happened with this is kind of the blank wall in the first place, and then going through the process of developing. I do this a little bit differently now, but I did want to show this piece because I don't want to brag about it or anything, but this has become a very, almost like a landmark down in Chico. In fact, they tore the building down to build a public a performing arts center, and they commissioned me to come back and redo it, and they even built a wall this size in front of it because the community has been so attached to it and are drawn to it. And it's a place-making thing. People come to see this from distances. I don't want to get too stuck on this here, but here's another wall that's not unlike the walls in the north elevation of the theater.
Whoa, easy. Come on.
Okay, this is much worse and much bigger. And I wanted to show you the process of how I would approach a thing now. So this is in my studio here in Truckee, and I'm doing a big portion of this mural that will go to this location in Honolulu. And then you can see the finished mural on the top and the process of the mural being actually installed. So I can use this material, install it on location. And this is a very exciting project for me. I think it's a good example of how I would go about this project. It also shows Queen Liliuokalani, who was the last reigning monarch of Hawaii, really gets into the heritage of Hawaii, and the locals really embrace this project, and it's got a lot of international attention. And this wall would be no different. Here are some of the local children who benefited from Queen Liliuokalani. We'll move on to there's the finished piece. A lot of glazing. So here's the wall there. There's some great, for me, these are great walls. I have relationships with walls. And this is one of the initial concepts, is to make these really large rocks that are kind of denoting the idea of Donner Pass and the Transcontinental Railroad. How come this isn't working? Oh, well. Oh, there we go. Sort of. Okay. So to the right, you can see Donner Pass. You can actually see the train tunnels and China Wall. And I'll move to the left. Oh, is that my time? Do I have another minute? I'll just rush through it really quick. Sorry about that.
Yeah, take another minute.
Okay, so the left side is one of the snowblowing things, and the Chinese coming out with a sign of Taoism to really embrace the Chinese heritage. I think that's really important that we honor them, because we kind of ran them out of town a long time ago, and they're the ones that really built this. So a lot of this is an homage to that, not to get too cauzy. And then even to the top here, you got some detail. Oops. Oh, there's a detail of a Chinese woman climbing a wall. It would not be an uncommon scene out here. And the basket's being lowered down as part of an element that would be in the mural. You can see the basket and the woman climber talking to each other, so we're kind of leaping over time a little bit. China wall, Chinese workers up there building the tracks, and down to the left we have Charlie Chaplin ice skating and some other things that denote theater. And I better stop while I'm ahead, but I just wanted to share the possibilities here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Q.
I don't do much public speaking. There we go. Good evening. I'm Spencer Wood, lifelong resident of downtown Truckee, and in my recent young adult life, a patron of Tahoe City and Truckee's nightlife and afternoon life. I have found the Tahoe Art House and Cinema in Tahoe City to be an excellent addition to the scene in Tahoe City, if you will, and I fully support the applicant's intent and proposal here. That's all. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Can we hold the applause until we adjourn the meeting? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is James Cole, and a longtime resident of North Tahoe. Going back to the 1846 time, my family's been in town, helped rescue the Donner Party, and my family's been a big influence on Tahoe for a long time. My grandmother's words about the art house after going to it was that was the best addition to Tahoe City that it has seen in 20 years. Tahoe City was on a fading light for a long time, and the art house has brought back energy that the town has been missing for years and years. It has brought back culture and connectivity with their people. It's brought other communities from around the region to Tahoe City to join together and share with the local productions that have been made. And the play that we saw 2 weeks ago was amazing. To see this community bond together through cinema has just been amazing to see. And as an artist and been enabled by Sig and Melissa through their generous contributions to my art, I see them as possible patrons in the future for artists to help enable them to paint that wall. And that's going to happen, and I see it happening, and I know it will, and I believe in these two, and I love them. Okay.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
You're making me cry.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
You're well loved, you guys. Hi, I'm Sarah Smith, and I'm the co-chair of Truckee Arts Alliance and program coordinator for Truckee's Cultural District. I just want to say, first of all, how wonderful the Art House is. It is my son's and my own favorite place to go. We absolutely adore it, and we love what you've done, and we love the interconnection with the community. It's just a fantastic thing. I love where I live, and I love it because of people like you. So what I want to say about this project is that everything about it, when I was looking at the plans, I just love everything about it, with the black box theater and the possibilities then for performance, with the fact that you do support small community theater, and that you do support local filmmakers, you support nonprofits and kids. It's just, anyway. So anyway, I'm in support. And what I love about it also is that I'm feeling really strongly that the town is in support and the community is in support. And so there's all this support just sort of swirling around this and wanting to find a way to make this happen. So given the fact that it's interconnected with artists and performers and creatives, let's tap that resource, because artists, if nothing else, are really good at solving problems. So I love the fact that public art is being considered as, obviously, since I'm an arts advocate here, I would love to see more public art going on. And I know that the town is very much in support of public art, as it is developing its very own public art master plan as we speak, about to be released. So I think it's a really good time. And I have a feeling that this can probably be solved, right? It's not a problem. It's an opportunity, just like you said. So I look forward to seeing what we do. There are lots of options, by the way. So I can share a few with you later.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Zabriskie and fellow commissioners. Alexis Aller, Executive Director of Mountain Area Preservation. As many of you know, MAP has been very supportive of the rail yard since its inception. The rail yard exemplifies infill, brownfield, and smart growth development principles, which are the fabric of good land use planning. I, too, as SIG, believe this is an exciting time for the rail yard. We have the artist lofts that will be, hopefully, cross your fingers, starting construction this summer. And with the anticipation of the theater coming to life in the near future, it's a really exciting time for the downtown extension. MAP is very supportive of the Truckee Art House, as this land use has been envisioned and vetted within the master plan for over 2 decades by community members, stakeholders, and decision makers for the town. Our downtown deserves to have a theater to add vibrancy, culture, and arts to an already very colorful and unique mountain town. We believe this future land use will be enjoyed by locals and visitors, creating an opportunity to enhance the heart of downtown with films, music, arts, and culture. In reviewing the staff report tonight, it seems as though the biggest issue for you to grapple with is the north and east elevations. I think it's a pretty easy fix tonight. I think the SIGs are open to granting an easement, and a future art mural or 3D art installation will solve this problem. And it doesn't have to be at the expense of the applicant. With the public art master plan in process, the north elevation should be identified as a future opportunity site where grants and fundraising can be explored by artists or stakeholders, and the town council can approve that future art project at a later date. Some additional thoughts would be having art bike racks. I can tell you that MAP fundraised for one at the little pocket park there. It's not that hard to fundraise. It's not a scary word. So I think there's some really great opportunities. I know budget and money is of concern, and you're already at the constraints. I do think looking future down the line later to incorporate sustainability could be an option, maybe a future solar panels. I love that you guys are using reclaimed materials from the old Union Pacific building, but it would be nice to see other sustainability measures within the project. Again, we want to express support for this. I hope that the commission can navigate through the process of finalizing the conditions. And as a host of the Wild and Scenic Film Festival in historic downtown Truckee, which is Friday, April 19th from 5 to 9 p.m., get your tickets, at the Community Arts Center, we are really excited about the opportunity of additional art and culture sites within downtown. We really want to make that film festival similar to what we experience in Nevada City. And so, and the SIGs this year have supported through sponsorship. So we think this is a great project. It is an exciting time. This is an awesome opportunity, and I hope that you'll support the project this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Pennington, and I'm a recently moved resident of Truckee, and I'm definitely in support of this project 100%. I did have just one question that wasn't immediately obvious from the publicly provided materials, and it's with regard to the sign plan. I think what Yumi said was that the sign plan has not been completed for the project. So I just wanted to raise a concern with the exterior lighting on the project, just to make sure that it's meets with the town of Truckee's already existing light ordinance. And so I'm sure that's already been considered, but I just wanted to raise it as a question, just to make sure that that's been considered, and that's all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Springett, and I live in downtown Truckee. I'm a big advocate of the art house. I enjoy Tahoe City movies very much, especially the non-blockbuster movies that you have, and the ones that are sensitive to the kind of the local environment and the outdoor orientation of our community. I'm a big advocate of the art, the murals. I think that would be great. I hope that happens. My concern is the signage as well. I think it has a very large marquee. I don't think the the absence of a large marquee hurts your Tahoe City business, as far as I can tell. And I'd like to be a little bit more sensitive to dark skies initiatives. So if the Planning Commission could take that into consideration, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Cassie Habel. I'm the director for the Truckee Downtown Merchants Association. With that hat on, we are definitely in support of this project and look forward to seeing what's going to happen in the future. And then with another hat, Truckee Public Arts Commission, way look forward to seeing what kind of public art can be created. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. Now, is there anyone else who would like to speak on this matter? Okay. Seeing no one, we'll now go to commission questioning. And Dave, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so I did get there was another email that somebody sent that had some night sky compliance questions. So do you guys, as the applicant, do you want to address what your plan is in regards to the signage and night sky compliance?
So the project does comply with the lighting ordinance and with the night sky portion of that. I don't remember all the details of that offhand, but we've made those calculations for the lumens that were allowed with this. One change that we did make at the request of planning staff is we were able to find a source for a marquee that reverses the traditional, the illuminated part being in the back and then the black letters on it. This one reverses it so only the letters are illuminated, and that reduces the illumination from it. Regarding the size of the marquee, quite a bit of that size is really determined by its function as a canopy, not just as a marquee. So that provides about 400 square feet of covered space outside of the entry. And the goal of that is to have enough space out front that as people are pouring out of a performance and it's, foul weather or anything like that, that there's some space to hang out and for people to mingle on the sidewalk there. So that was the goal of the enlarged canopy. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Did that address your question? Yeah, absolutely, yes. Thank you very much. Okay, so I know there's going to be a lot of talk about these north wall in particular. And at one point in time, there was what looked to be a pixelated plan in one of the original applications, which, from my understanding, would just be various use of different color CMUs. Right, and at some point in time, that breaks up the massing of that, visually a little bit. How do we get away from that?
There was some ambivalent feedback on that, and I think ultimately what turned us away from it is it doesn't seem compatible with the public art component, and so we chose to pursue the public art as the solution for these walls as opposed to this pattern. I think as both on the applicant team and on staff, I think there's some ambivalence. So there's some people that feel like this could be better and people that feel like it might not be. So I think it's still in the mix.
Okay, so explain to me, I'm just curious how these two are mutually exclusive. I mean, from my, understanding, it looks like that public art, and maybe the artist would like to comment, looks like he's just essentially painting over that whole thing. Is that not correct?
In John's approach, that's exactly what would happen. It would paint over the entire wall, and in that way, it wouldn't be incompatible.
Okay, and is there a cost associated, up or down in regards to having a pixelated versus just a one color CMU?
There's not significant cost.
And how much are we talking about for the art? I mean, what are the numbers that we're talking about? I understand, and I'm very sensitive to the fact that you folks only have a certain amount of money to spend, and I'm also glad to hear that there's so much support for it, and I do believe that we could come up with the fundraising, but just out of curiosity, I mean, it looks fantastic, and, how much is it, just in case I want to do my house too?
well, initial projected range would be from $100,000 to $200,000.
And that's for everything. And then who maintains it after that?
There's products that I can use that will be very highly durable, but I imagine that the city would also be, it's been expressed by members from the town council that they would be responsible.
Do you want to stand up to the podium, please? Thanks.
I hope I have the answers for you, but
No, yeah,
I've been through this process before with a couple of town council members, and the city would maintain that. I think that the town would take on the responsibility of making sure that there was maintenance on the murals. And there's a very easy maintenance program that I can share.
Okay.
Plus,
So-
I'm not
so
going
you'd be-
anywhere.
yeah.
Now, this stuff, this B72, the stuff that I would be applying to the project, it actually transforms the nature of the acrylic. I don't want to get all sciencey here, but it turns it into a very durable product. So if someone tagged it, you could remove it really easy with an aggressive solvent without damaging the mural. It kind of breaks that paradigm. This stuff also prevents it from fading or oxidizing for up to 100 years. So it's a pretty permanent public art piece.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then Steph, did you have some comments?
I was just going to say that the council hasn't decided yet how maintenance would be addressed because they haven't formalized their arts master plan where they hope to talk about topics such as maintenance. So obviously that is something that we would want to make sure we're looking at with public art, but as of right now, there's nothing formalized.
Yeah, I'm jumping ahead here. Sorry about that. It's just hearsay at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's all I have for now.
Okay, Nikki?
I wanted to tag on to your question and what you had just said, Danielle, about the council and the master plan. What's been done kind of to date for public art in terms of maintenance? I know the town has spent money on the ants and the musicians and some other pieces. I think the bicycle, is there money allocated for maintenance, or is it just straight purchase, or has there been a precedent set for that?
A lot of our art just varies. So some of it's by donation, so it's a temporary piece, or if it is art that we've purchased, it hasn't required any real level of maintenance at this point. Some of the pieces are more rustic on purpose, so the level of maintenance with that is kind of different. So if obviously something broke, the town would go out and talk to the artist about it and figure out a way to fix that. Sometimes that's with our facilities division that can do that. It just depends. But like I said, so far we really haven't had any challenges with maintenance with public art because it's been pretty durable.
Okay. So there wasn't like something to go back to on that. Okay. Is there an ambivalence to be kind of having these conversations? Is this preemptive because this master plan hasn't been approved or solidified?
I think the commission has the ability to talk about maintenance if you would like to. I think the way that the staff is structured, the recommended condition of approval specific to art gives some flexibility and also allows the arts master planning process to get more formalized. We do plan on producing the draft plan hopefully at the end of this week and then having a workshop the following week. So it's progressing, and I do foresee council having some action in the near future on it. So I think that the timing works, but obviously if the commission wants to talk about maintenance, that's something you can make as part of your recommendation.
Okay. So it is timely. And then you kind of just touched on would we might make a recommendation to town council, or like about funding? Could the planning commission make a recommendation to the town council in support of town funding for this, in addition to condition, is it 18 or 20? I can't remember which.
CO 18.
Is it 18? 18. 18, yeah. Thanks.
You can say words like encourage. What you wouldn't want to do is put a requirement necessarily in there that says, the town shall, because that's a policy decision that hasn't been made. But I do think if you find it important as a commission to include some language that talks about support, encouragement, then that's definitely within your purview.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions at this point, but I do have 2 disclosures to make. I wanted to put those out on the front end of the meeting. The first one is my husband, Brendan Riley, did serve on the ARC, Architectural Review Committee, for this project. He's a volunteer. I don't benefit financially, neither does he. And I wasn't a planning commissioner at that time. Not that, I don't know if that matters. And then the other is I did meet with the SIGs last week. And we met at Zuri. They showed me their project, and I just wanted to put that out there. So that's all I have at this point.
My questions for the applicant are directed at any of you 3, whoever you think is best, most willing or anxious to answer the question. First thing I wanted to ask about is the town's use of the theater. We heard earlier from the staff on an amendment that would acknowledge the town will be able to use the theater. Can you tell me what you understand to be the terms of that? Like, under what circumstances would the town use it, and how much of it does it get to use, over time?
So we do not have an agreement yet between us and the town. That the agreement they had was with the holiday development. So we will need to work that out with them. But we've had several discussions. Our understanding is that in exchange for the $500,000 that was spelled out, the large room which doubles as a hybrid performing arts venue, would be available for free to community performing arts groups for a certain number of days a year. So we would have to work that all out. But let's say Truckee Community Theater would be able to show, a 3, 4, 5 day run of a play, including rehearsal time, or maybe a local ballet group. So they would get that for free. That is our understanding. We have to work out the details, like how many days are available and all that.
Would it be possible that the town would be able to use it sometime during the height of your season, during the summer, winter, or would it just be in the shoulder seasons?
It would be mainly in the shoulder season. That's how we envision it, because we're so busy with movies during the Christmas period and the summer period. That's what we're experiencing in Tahoe City, so we envision it would be even busier in Truckee.
And I'd like to address that a little bit. It is so important to us. It is so important to us. One of the reasons that we need 3 screens is for programming. And it's not just that one auditorium that we would make available. We could use the other auditoriums depending on what they are. It's hard for us at the Tahoe City location because we only have 1 screen. What happens is if we have enough lead time, and say we have a Star Wars event, because that's what happens in Christmas time, and it's huge, so we would be able to put Star Wars in 2 of those venues to make room for the big venue for a Christmas show or something like that. What's critical with our relationship with the major studios, it's a crazy business just to let you know, but if we have those 2 other screens, it opens us up to allow more community events. It's one of our directives of why we want to grow our business to Truckee. 1, we spend a lot of time in Truckee now. And 2, it really opens up our programming. We're not achieving the art house level that we want to with just the 1 screen in Tahoe City. So this is the opportunity to embrace all of it.
I just want to clarify one thing about that. The way that it works with studios is that when we show a major motion picture with 1 screen, as we have now, we are locked in for a certain amount of time to show that movie. We cannot stop for 1 day. So if we're showing Captain Marvel for 3 weeks, we can't pause it to do a community event. So that's having 3 screens really gives us flexibility to do more stuff like that.
Okay. The next question I have concerns your ability to multiply your business. It sounds like this is not just a doubling of your workload. It's going to be this theater is going to be quite a bit bigger than the Tahoe Art House. How are you going to handle all your additional responsibilities?
Actually, we're not actually that concerned about that. We have great management who would, our manager Richard would basically run the Truckee Art House as a manager. We are owner operators, so we're very injected almost daily to what we do. This is the opportunity to hire more people so we can offer more jobs to our public, but it's also a skeleton crew as well. So we don't see that as a concern at this point. Are you trying to make me scared?
Yeah, the fact you're not worried concerns me.
No, I think we're more worried about this process and the hurdles that we have to jump through. We're not developers, so we've learned quite a bit, but we're very experienced in just the 5 years of what we've learned and our understanding of this business. It's a simple business when it really comes down to it. When it gets complicated is when we bring in different shows and we have to, the hardest part is really the programming. It's really allocating the time that people need. Say it's a theater group that they need to come in and they need to rehearse for a week before the show. That will be our biggest hurdle as far as the operations. But running the 3-screener, everything is segmented on time. So you're filling one theater at one time, and that's your concession time for that showing, and then the next showing. So it's all staggered. And we feel that we're very confident in operations.
Can you tell me what the average number of cars per person is at your theater? Like how many cars are used to access your Tahoe Art House?
That is a hard number to put, but if I were to guess, and this is my best guess, is that most people come 2, 3, 4, and 5 to a car because they're all going out together. And maybe it's 2 couples meeting, so then that would be 2 cars per 4.
Have you considered how many vehicles or how many parking spaces would be used up by your patrons here in Truckee?
Parking is probably one of my biggest issues because it's paid parking during the day and nighttime, but it seems that everything's been allocated to support our patrons, and having all of the parking by the rail yard or by the train tracks. It's an easier way to say that. And having those people walk to the theater, I think, is great because it invites people to be downtown. And that's what we're really after, is people to get out of their cars and experience Truckee.
Okay. I believe staff had said that it was assigning 36 parking spaces, estimating that 36 spaces should be allocated to your theater based on a generic standard of square footage for a commercial operation. There was a comment submitted that estimated it would take 150 cars for a 300-seat theater. That if you fill a 300-seat theater, you're going to use up 150 parking spaces. With those two numbers in mind, where do you think your theater would fall in terms of parking demand?
Well, I feel that's a good thing that we have people coming to the theater because they're going to do more than just come to the theater.
Right, but I'm trying to get a better idea of how
also, isn't one of the goal of the rail yards is it's a walkable development, so people could be walking. Not everyone will be driving. That's one point of this, right? People could be walking from their homes or biking, and then also a lot of people might dine before, so they might park in downtown, the old commercial core, and walk over. I mean, we don't know how many people drive to our theater because when we greet them, we don't see them park. So we're already inside, and if you've been to the Cobblestone, I can't see them park. But I do know a lot of people, you might park where they ate and then walk over. But I also know this was designed to be a walkable destination and a bikeable destination.
That's what we're hoping for. Okay, I want to move on to another but related question. Do you think there should be a parking limitation in front of your theater that allows for the unloading or loading of passengers by people who actually do have more than one person in the car?
We would love an unloading zone because people can drop off their kids, and that's kind of like the destination that they're going to, and then those kids can venture off after they see the matinee and go to the ice cream shop. Or
so you think short-term parking in front of the theater would be a good thing to drop people off?
Personally, yes, but I would leave that up to the staff to determine.
Well, based on your experience as a theater operator.
Yes.
Because there's definitely parents who drop off kids to see movies. So I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, you noticed that the sidewalk would be 12 feet wide in front of your theater. Do you think that's wide enough to handle the crowds milling about, coming in or going out?
Definitely, especially with the marquee sign as weather protection.
Okay, we have a trash collector on the north side along Church Street. I assume there'll be food thrown in there from your restaurant, unless you have a separate program for doing an organic
There will
disposal.
definitely be some popcorn in the trash.
Okay. What do you plan for reducing the odor from the decomposing food in the trash? Or how are you going to avoid foul odors coming out of the trash enclosure affecting people who are trying to enjoy this pedestrian life we just talked about?
Well, I think it's advantageous to us to have it not in the alley and on the north side, because I think there's going to be more air movement in that area. We're also big on recycling and separating and whatnot. So, these are concerns that we think we've done a good job with putting on the north side.
The trash enclosure is also fully enclosed. So there is a roof. So it will be a fully enclosed. So in theory, the smell shouldn't come out. We also do not serve that much food. We have very limited. In the Tahoe City Art House, we currently do candy, popcorn, pizza, grilled cheese, hot dogs, pretzels. Maybe we do a little bit more in Truckee, but we're not planning on having a full kitchen. So we won't be a full restaurant.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think the popcorn doesn't smell as it deteriorates. I don't think that we're not a restaurant by any means. So the smell, I think, is, as long as we don't have somebody else sharing our trash can, thank God it's locked, right, Brett? Yeah, okay. So I don't think smell is an issue, and it's not going to be in the sun. So I think that's good as well.
Will the transformer create any noise?
It shouldn't.
You don't know.
And it won't affect our patrons, but if there was any noise, it would be a slight hum like what I can hear in here right now from the fluorescent lights.
Yeah. It comes back to Church Street. We want to have Church Street be pedestrian friendly, and a number of criticisms, not necessarily actually submitted, but a number of criticisms were about the theater not being pedestrian friendly. That's part of the reason I'm asking these questions.
We're pedestrian friendly in the lobby.
Right, and I'm out on the street.
A couple of comments to that. One is that how we arrived with both the transformer and the trash on the north side is when we had our initial preliminary application meeting with the town and engineering was there. They made it clear that we were not to use the pedestrian alley for trash, and that was not an acceptable use for that. I think that has probably softened some now, but that's what got the design started in that direction. I do think that there is, both of those have some potential, but this building was designed to have it on the north side based on the direction of the engineering department. Regarding the pedestrian friendly, we really focus the energy for the pedestrian experience on the primary street on Truckee Way and wrap that as far around the corner as we could in the roundabout given just the way the pieces of the puzzle fit together for the program, the need for the kitchen to have storage space adjacent to it. We looked at many other options, and we looked at this with the Architectural Review Committee, and there was not another clear solution for how to arrange those pieces. So we've made an effort to bring that around as far as we can onto Church Street, but it is a challenge with the theater that we have large opaque volumes.
Okay. The Church Street is the street that'll lead over to Glenshire Drive. That'll be a collector street. And connected with that, there will be probably pedestrian activity.
Correct. We're anticipating that there's pedestrian activity, but the primary pedestrian street is Truckee Way.
And then Donner Pass
and Donner
Extension.
Pass Road.
Okay, you identified Donner Pass Extension as a main thoroughfare, is that correct?
So it's identified in the master plan as a primary street. That's different than the arterial and collector designations.
Okay. You identified the structure to the south of the theater as a brew pub on one of your drawings. Is there a brew pub plan for that location?
My understanding is that was the plan in 2016 when the master plan, that was Holiday Development anticipated a brew pub going in there. Last I heard, that is not the current plan for that development, but I don't believe that anything's been submitted to the town on that.
Okay. Have you had any discussions with Holiday, or do you have any ideas about how your architecture will affect the architecture of the neighboring structures? The structures that we don't know yet what they're going to be, but that are going to go in on the west side or the south side. I'm looking for indication of compatibility and the extent to which your design might limit or affect the design of the adjacent buildings.
Sure. So we've made efforts not to limit the adjacent buildings. An example of that is that the marquee on the south side of the west elevation is pulled far enough away that we're anticipating that the building that goes into the south might want to have a canopy of its own, and we need the marquee to be readable. So that's pulled away so that we don't have a conflict between those. One thing that's important in the design guidelines is the street wall articulation, having a variation in height and volume along the street wall. The theater is not at the height limit here. That ghosted in volume to the right represents the zoning envelope of the adjacent property, which if I remember correctly, is about 8 feet taller than the theater. Other than that, the current developer that's considering developing that lot to the south has been in conversation with us, and we've shared models with him. He's working with our design.
Are you aware of any need, or have you contemplated having lighting in the alleyway behind your structure? And I'm talking stuff that's compliant with our night sky desires.
Sure. So the extent of the lighting that we've included in the alleyway is the required exit lighting. Other than that, we have not added additional lighting in the streetscape plan for the district. There's been discussion of having, some kind of other lighting that could go in there for Truckee Thursdays, things like that. I think that could be great. Another idea that's come up is for those types of activities, the ability to stretch a screen across the alley so that movies can be projected above the alley. So that's something that these guys were excited about seeing happen there.
Has the applicant looked at the comment from Dan Cockrum about imposing limitations on alcohol use in the theater?
I'll let you take that one.
I'm not familiar with that, but the one thing about having beer and wine is that we don't have a drunken problem. That's what we've noticed at the Tahoe Art House and Cinema, is that people aren't coming here to get drunk. They're here to have a couple libations and watch a movie. They're not coming here to sit themselves down and have a drinking party.
Was that your question?
No, Mr. Dan Cockrum submitted a comment, and one of the first things he noted was the difference between what you're planning for Truckee and what exists in Tahoe City. He points out you have a single theater in Tahoe City, and he makes some reasonable proposals I can't dismiss out of hand, about limiting consumption of alcohol in the theaters, in part because there are 3 theaters, and at least one of them is much larger than what you have in Tahoe City. It's all to the point that it's much easier for you to keep track of the drinking that goes on in the theater seats in Tahoe City.
So his concern was that there'd be too much drinking happening?
His concern is drunkenness, alcoholism, underage drinking.
Yeah. Well, I can comment that currently, as Sig said, we really haven't run into problems. Most people drink 1 to 2 beers. They're just there to enjoy a movie. As I said, we're not a bar. People don't really sit down and camp out and drink. The more they drink, the more they also have to get up to go to the bathroom, and they miss parts of the movie. We also card. Anyone under 35, we card. We're very good about that. I mean, just from experience, I don't think it's much of a concern. As I said, and of course, we'll have to go through the ABC process. And currently, we're not allowed to give people more than 2 beers at a time. I just don't foresee it really being a problem based on the experience we have now. I understand that we are going to be bigger, but as I said, most people come just to have 1 or 2 glasses of wine or beer. That's it.
Yeah, he points, in response to the point you just made, he points out you're going to be showing feature-length movies now, big popular movies during the summer and winter, and you're going to have groups of underage and legal-aged kids, if you will, coming in together. And so there's a much greater risk of their sharing alcohol in the seats in the theater.
Yeah, so I understand the concern, and we are hyper focused on making sure that does not happen. It has not presented itself as a problem so far, and the ABC is very, very strict with our licensing, and usually the problems come with alcohol consumption, with hard alcohol. The beer and wine has not presented a problem yet, but we will tell you this: we don't want it to happen in our establishment, and we want to make sure that we secure our ABC license. And if we would never, ever in a million years want to jeopardize that situation with the ABC.
I have certainly enjoyed beer at your Tahoe Art House.
That I'd love to hear.
But this is a valid concern that Mr. Cochran raised. Mm-hmm. The other thing, that's the last of my questions. For you, I'll have questions for staff. I think I pointed this out before. A lot of the enthusiasm over this project is due to people's appreciation of your theater in Tahoe City, and that's nice to see. Okay, those are all.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for the thoughtful presentations, and thanks for the public coming out. I had a question on the development agreement. Yumi, you touched on that, and you talked about the $250K. I think it was for 2 years, or could you pull up that slide? So I just want to understand this a little better. I understand what a development agreement is, but is this payment from the town to facilitate that community benefit and that use of the theater?
Yes, it is a forgivable loan, and the idea behind this was to incentivize the continued operation of the theater. So that was something when staff were looking at the development agreement and kind of working through the different terms, that this was something that the town could contribute to support the theater as a community use.
It just feels like we should know what that is going to include before we agree on a pricing and I know there was talk about, does the town get use of it during the high season or the low season? And, when do those details get completely finalized?
We were waiting until we had an approved project to finalize that. I anticipate that agreement would be something that would go to council before we move forward. We have discussed initial terms on sort of what the process would be for reserving those dates. We haven't come to a final determination on the number of dates, but we anticipate that is something that we'll bring back to council for final approval.
Great, thank you.
And just to clarify on that, the $50,000 a year is not necessarily sort of like that's the cost of that X number of dates. That's really, as Danielle suggested, that's intended as a subsidy to keep the theater in general as a community benefit, both for the movie theater component as well as for these community use days.
Great, thank you. So on the affordable housing, I understand that, the artist loft sort of serves as a bank, and that the unit that isn't needed would be pulled from that, or you pay the $25K, but I don't understand how the artist lofts project gets reimbursed if they don't choose to pay the $25K. I guess I'm confused on the how those two function.
So it is a little bit of a different concept than we have with our more typical inclusionary and workforce housing that we've seen with other projects that come forward, because all of the affordability for the rail yard was looked at comprehensively. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the options that was included in the affordable housing plan was this kind of banking concept where when we did the calculations, we assumed the full maximum development potential of, say we're using the downtown extension district as an example, where we looked at the most square footages that could be approved, based the affordable housing calculation on that, and then looked at the artist loft site and said, okay, is that enough to satisfy all of the workforce housing, probably not all the inclusionary, but at least workforce for development within the downtown extension district? And we said, yeah, it probably is. What we programmed so that that's solidified into the affordable housing plan is the ability for it's essentially Holiday Development that kind of has to weigh in on that decision, because he's donating the land to the artist lofts, which has a $1.6+ million valuation to it. So the artist lofts have what they need, which is land available. They don't have to worry about inclusionary, and other projects that come in that have to satisfy their workforce housing requirements have the ability to either do that on site if they choose, or they're negotiating sort of outside of the town's realm with Rick Holiday about what that looks like.
Got it. So they'll need to negotiate with Rick if they choose not to pay the $25,000.
Correct. And the town structured it that way so that we don't have to be the bank. We initially had done some draft versions of that where we could have acted as the bank, but because we have to figure out valuations and other things, it became too complicated, where we just decided that it's much easier if the two parties kind of work together without the town involved.
Great, thank you. And then on condition 18, I know there were three options. There was the, here we go, the architectural cladding, art, or offer an easement to the town for public art. I guess I just want to make sure that the applicants can live with this, and the town, are the applicants proposing a revision to this condition?
We would like this condition to be taken out completely. We support paragraph 3, but we cannot be on the hook for cladding, or we cannot be financially obligated to the public art. We support the easement.
Right. So you would request that maybe 1 and 2 were removed, and you would support the easement. And then, well, if the town's proposing this condition, you're clearly amenable to accepting an easement.
That'd be a question for our council, whether or not they would. So the condition reads that they can offer that easement, but the town could not accept the easement. So the purpose of the 3-tiered approach within the conditions is to have this is perhaps all of them could serve as a measure that could help them move forward with the project.
Right. So if one option doesn't work, you fall back on another plan and you fundraise and get the art in or something like that. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was I love the murals. I love the art. I'm super supportive of that. However, I do think that the architectural cladding should not be ruled out. In my opinion, 2 large murals like that right next to each other could be a lot. And so I just really want to make sure, if this moves forward, that we do not rule that out. So I would very much propose that not to be removed. And then lastly, I understand that the east elevation is the alley. That being said, I think we need to work on doing a few different things in there architecturally to soften that and make it more pedestrian friendly. And in fact, I almost felt like in one of the earlier versions, there was a bit more articulation on the east elevation. And I could be wrong on that, but could we maybe scroll through those? So okay, no, it did get better. All right.
Commissioner Hall, just to add to that, in the newer versions of the artist lofts, they've been able to add back in some of the stoops that face onto the alley, where the last version that the commission had seen had removed all the stoops because of the modular construction. But I think if you saw those side by side, you would see that there's some additional articulation on the artist lofts building that would help with that view shed up the alley.
Okay, that's it for now.
Okay. I had a lot of questions on this. I have met with Yumi for an hour and a half. I actually spoke with the SIGs today on the phone. I've contacted some other people. I also have to disclose that Sarah Smith is one of my oldest friends. We have talked a little bit about the art, but not to any large degree. So I'm going to address it. I sort of wrote my notes down. I'm going to start with the architecture. According to the ARC, art would be great, but the building should not rely on art. Architecture should stand on its own. And I think it doesn't currently stand on its own architecture back here in the alley and along the north side. I'm not saying that's a reason to not approve the project. But I do want to point out that this building, if this building was not a theater put forth by the SIGs, if it was put forth by a big box store, this wouldn't be approved, and it could look very similar. So this is in part due to their involvement in the community that this is considered. It does concern me a little bit, a precedent towards allowing what's kind of a box construction. That concerns me because, if, God forbid, this business was not successful, a big box store could move into this shop with no exterior modification. And I believe, and Yumi can correct me, that a use permit would have to be given to them because if they fit in the space. So I just want to say I am concerned about the precedent on that. I don't know if she doesn't seem to be correcting me or not. So I'm going to say I think that's...
If allowed use that's within the downtown extension allowed uses table that's allowed through a zoning clearance, it would just be through the staff level review unless an exterior modification is proposed, in which that condition of approval that I proposed to amend would then trigger.
Would trigger, yeah, good, okay. So I just want to... I'm going to point out a couple things. Why am I concerned about the architecture other than this precedent? I'm also concerned about walkability. The town and the state are moving towards this, are making a priority. There are regulations that might allow affordable housing to be built without any parking at all. So the state is definitely moving in that direction. It's not there yet, but the art house does get to benefit from this walkability because you are not required to provide parking spaces. There are some provided for you already. Walkability helps with sustainability. Vehicle emissions are the largest single contributor to California greenhouse gas emissions, probably about 40%. So in order to contribute to walkability, we need to have spaces that people want to visit. I agree that that front is compelling. The west elevation is compelling. The north and the east, not as much. So to make spaces that people want to visit, we need to have places to walk that are useful. So going to the movies is definitely useful. We need to have places that are safe. So I don't know if this is their purview or town purview, but I visited the site today, and it is it's right on that roundabout there. So if I was there with my family, I'd probably be holding really tight to my 7-year-old's hand. We could improve pedestrian safety in that area. There are these big granite bollards. I don't know if the town can look into. I don't know if we could. The SIGs were like, yeah, that sounds great. If we, between those bollards, I would love to see like tree planting. Not only does that make the space safer for pedestrians, it makes it more comfortable in heat and stuff. I don't know if this is possible. I talked with Yumi and she said, sure, bring it up. So I am. Then we have a useless walk. We have a safe walk. We're looking for a comfortable walk now. Sorry, there's 4 different things for being a walkable space. I have, again, talked with the SIGs about it. To make these spaces more comfortable, even that west elevation is not as inviting. So in order to be inviting to the public, you need robust transition zones between inside and outside. So I asked if they would be interested in sort of exterior benches along the front or cafe tables even to invite that inside space out and that outside space in. They said, sure, we don't have a problem with that. So, but I think it's a different process with the town. So then the last 4th thing to make spaces walkable is they need to be interesting. And unfortunately, the north and east are not interesting. It does require some form of art because the architecture itself is not interesting. So I'm totally in for other solutions. It sounds to me like we cannot edit this number 18 because we cannot make that decision for the town council. Is that correct?
I think that 3rd component, it'd be difficult to edit unless you wanted to strike it.
No, not to strike the 3rd one. They want to strike the 1st and 2nd one.
Sure. I think that would be a difficult one to edit since we don't necessarily want to condition our council to do something.
Okay.
So, Susie, if I could just, sorry, this is Jeff Lux. I jumped in here. The one thing I think, if Andy were here, I think he would say we can't require sort of public art. It's not something that one could require as a nexus item. But the easement as an alternative to, architectural cladding or other possibilities is something that we can do. But we can't say you have to do the public art. So that would be one change or amendment that I think we wouldn't be able to make.
Right. It's a condition based on consistency with the design guidelines in the master plan, which is something that you can have as a condition.
We can't require, for example, the theater operators to pay for, an expensive public art piece. What they can do is provide the canvas, I believe they suggested, which that is possible. If that doesn't work, the other 2 conditions one of those other 2 conditions would hold.
Can you delete the other 2 conditions?
We could. I believe staff is not recommending that.
I think the difficulty with that is that it doesn't give you any other options. So we wanted to ensure that there was at least some option to move forward with a project if the town council decides that is not the condition they want to move forward with.
I mean, the one comment I want to make on the architectural cladding is that it is not in our budget. We do not have that money. We're very transparent about that. We could come in here as developers and be like, whatever you want, whatever you guys decide. That's just not how we roll. We are very truthful. It's something that we don't have budgeted because we want to be successful. We don't want to leave this site. We want to leave this to our kids. This is a community-oriented thing, and we don't want to fail so that a big box, comes in and takes over this property, So we have to really look at the bottom line all the way through. And we've been very, very clear that we can't add any more cost to this building because we want it to be successful. There's profitability in this, but there's not enough that we can say, yeah, we can spend another $500,000 or $250,000 here. We have to make sure that we stay within budget.
Thank you. So I understand that we can't require art, but if we're making an exception to architecture that we don't like and don't feel that should be approved, I mean, it's trying to make it easier for them to, instead of having to redo the architecture, correct?
Well, we believe the condition as written does give the flexibility to come up with a good solution. We just, because we don't have the whole public arts master plan conversation completed, it's a little hard to be certain at this point. And that's maybe a bit of discomfort. I get that. We think that the recommendations that are beginning to emerge from the arts master plan conversation will line up and will ultimately give the town the ability to make some public art there that'll work. But there's just no 100% guarantee, unfortunately. As an overarching comment from an old planner, that would be me, really old planner, there are certain land uses that don't lend themselves to having a great deal of extra dollars for really great architecture, unfortunately. I think theaters are absolutely one of those. Not that there aren't beautiful theaters around, but as Danielle started, very often a theater is tucked in amongst other buildings, and so you don't see the sides that you can't put any money into. They are in fact blank walls. I think the way that the development agreement, the master plan has consistently looked at this is that the land use itself is the enlivening use. And I think, as you just mentioned that, you said, that's, why will people walk around? They walk around because they want to go to the movies and they want to be down here. And so I think that at some point, that's the trade-off. If we had a nice place to hide the blank wall, that would be great. It's just, that's not the geography here. So we're trying to do the best we can given what we have.
Well, and I think too, when we looked at the wording for that condition, using sort of generic words like public art, cladding, there's a lot of flexibility that's built into how that can be interpreted. I know that when Yumi and I were looking at the designs originally, we were looking at other, movie theater styles. We were looking at, different sorts of wall treatments and things that weren't expensive. One of the things that we even brainstormed was the town has a bunch of, wood that we cut down from some trees that fell out in Glenshire, and those are the rounds that are kind of out by the trailhead for the Legacy Trail. We still have some of that tree remaining where you could cut sections of that and potentially use that as a three-dimensional art piece. I mean, that's something that the town currently has that's free that, could be integrated somehow. We don't know. And I think the SIGs are...
Love it.
I was going to say, the SIGs are open to different ideas, and I think what we were hoping through developing this condition was that we could kind of take that dialogue, outside of sort of just the commission's review process and work together on something that the community would love.
Okay, excellent. I do not want to be the sticky wicket on this. I just was trying to, it seems that I had it backwards. And so I stand corrected, and I am gleeful that it's not an issue. That's good. Moving on. I want to say I'm fine with the street wall articulation being slightly different than the requirement. It's more than 75% of what it's supposed to be. I don't feel great about the north side trash facilities, but I understand that there isn't really another option since they were kind of told they couldn't do the alley. On condition of approval 22, they talk about removing one of the poster locations, and I am all in favor of keeping that. I think it's more engaging for the public to have all of those there, especially if we don't have public art at this point. I don't know how my fellow council members really feel, commission members. I want to say the parking numbers are a little bit shocking, but I'm in for a penny, in for a pound here. Let's go. Let's do it together. Let's make our town walkable. I have to change my habits as well, but I love Truckee, and I think we can do it together. So I did speak with the SIGs about their full-time employee equivalents. It sounded like that is the 5 employees for the first shift and 2 employees for the second shift. Didn't sound like exactly what they wanted, but I don't think it's going to change any of those calculations. They will still be well within the 1 unit, I believe. So just that I talked with them about that. I did have concerns about a black box performance space. I'm not a performance artist. I didn't know if that would work for anyone in town, not having, it's a removable or replaceable stage. I'm not saying the right word, but, and it doesn't have a backstage. So you can't get from one side of the backstage to the other. You have to come in where the patrons come in. So I was concerned, is this going to fulfill a need? I did reach out to some of the performance arts community. I talked with Eve from Arts at the Schools, Nancy at Trails and Vistas, and Nora, formerly of Inner Rhythms. I have to say generally they're in favor of it, so that's great. They did have some concerns, mainly about this, what do we call it? The joint use agreement, and I feel like that needs to be hammered out, but we don't need to do that tonight, correct? Okay. They were concerned how many events would be allowed per year. Is there a different nonprofit rental rate? Who makes those decisions? It's just you two, or is it part of the town since the town's invested as well? And will weekends ever be available, or will it always be weeknights? I don't know if you want to answer those, or.
Well, if you're a 501c3, we always extend more than we want to. Melissa usually does all of our special events.
My understanding with the few talks we've had with the town, and of course this is not finalized, is that I think the town, I think they need to be nonprofit groups. I think the town has to figure out who qualifies. But I think our agreement was that a certain number of days a year, these community groups would get the venue for free. That's our agreement with the town. Already, in Tahoe, we do have a nonprofit rate for rentals, so we already extend that. So if we used up all our free days with the town and a community group came to us, we do have a discounted nonprofit rate.
Great, thank you.
As far as the black box, this is a hybrid black box, and there are side wings, but it is not designed to have a backstage. The one thing about our community is most people are used to that. Especially at OVI, which is our biggest venue in the area, they do not have a backstage as well. What's important is the green room. It is not right backstage, which is difficult, is not perfect, but it was an element that we thought that was really, really important, is to have that green room. It'd be great if we could have a movable screen and create a backstage. So you basically put the screen on wheels and then you move that forward. We'd have to shrink the screen a little bit, but that could create a backstage, but then you lose the seats. And that's kind of the big thing. And the biggest stage with performing arts is always ballet. And it's easily solved is that, okay, we take some of those seats away, but then you add more shows. So they're still more intimate. So if we took away some seats, and we're not 200 seats because we moved the screen and we figured out a way to pay for that, one of our equipment providers does that in Alameda with his screen, and it works very well. We're open to that. If you need a backstage, we could find a way, but then we just wouldn't have that 200-seat auditorium.
And are those front row seats removable?
Yes.
Okay.
The way that we have the Tahoe Art House is we thought that we'd do something cool and put some couches in the back, and we realized that everybody goes to the couches, and we've decided to put the couches in the front, and those are removable, and the first two rows. So these are easily removed, and then these are, not as easy, but that's our concert setup. Is we take out all of these rows, and then this is the dance floor with the stage in front.
Great, thank you. Two really quick questions. What is the square footage of that green room? Do you happen to know?
It's 173 square feet.
Oh, thank you.
Technology.
So 17 by 10-ish. And then...
It does have a bathroom, though, which is key.
I saw that, yeah. What is the number of seats at the Tahoe Art House?
The Tahoe Art House, we can range, it's 100 for our usual cinema, and then we go up to 140 with stackable seats.
Great.
And then standing room, we're about 280, depending on the stage setup.
Great. Okay, so there was a little mention of sustainability earlier. The only thing, kind of whiff hint of it I could get from the staff report was that it was mentioned all light sources shall be energy efficient. Is there anything else you want to add, enlighten us about your sustainability practices?
Well, reuse, recycle is a huge part of what we do. No plastic Tahoes is a big initiative. Currently at the Tahoe Art House and Cinema, the only plastic we have is our butter. That is the only plastic that we have. And the lids for Cokes. And we hate straws. In fact, we give licorice away as straws because we hate that. So recycle, reuse is really important. And it was one of our design components of using the UPC tin. And Holiday Development was nice enough to store that for us so that we could reuse it and celebrate the history of Truckee at the same time reuse and repurpose.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I did have one question. Is John Pugh still here? Is this the wall, the CMU, is that more textured than the walls you usually use? It looks lumpier.
Usually with all projects, I'll have a skim coat put onto the wall too. So that's a very easy wall to skim coat. So it will be smooth for the project if this happens.
If it happens, great, thank you. I just didn't know if you had to. I just didn't know if you had to paint on the lumpy. Okay, the last thing that I have was looking through the commission resolutions. We've already talked about 18. Number 16 said this interesting thing. It said the alley furnishings, including seating and dining, landscape planters, bicycle racks, shall be consistent with Phase 1 streetscape improvement plan. I love that they have dining back there. I don't want to remove it. I want to have a plan. I want to have food trucks back there. I want to have dining in the alley. Can we leave that in there for that future eventuality? Sure. Great. Again, I mentioned already the condition number 22. I'm fine with the, what was it, I'm fine with the signs proposed by the applicant. I would like to see how the commission, the rest of them feel. Number 26 says interior lights should be dimmed to 50%.
I did talk to our building official after our discussion, and he said that there are already building code requirements in place that requires that the occupancy sensors or timers go off and turn off all the lights within the building for non-residential buildings.
Great. So when it's closed, all the lights are going to go off. Great. For energy savings and night skies. Thank you. And that's all I have. Thank you for bearing with me.
Okay, now I'd like to turn to any commission questions for staff that haven't been addressed. I was trying to do the applicant in one set and staff in another, but what's that? No, I
didn't get them all.
Dave, do you have any additional questions for staff?
I do not.
Okay. Nikki?
No, I don't.
Jerusha?
I have one. Could we recommend a condition that this project is considered like a priority project and of first priority in the new the art plan, downtown art plan?
I mean, I think you could add that in the condition to sort of support your reasoning for your actions on the project. So, I mean, I don't see why not. Maybe
a suggestion, maybe instead of making a condition, because that would imply it's a condition on the applicant, maybe it's a separate recommendation, because that really, I mean, if the applicant does the easement, then it would be incumbent on the town and whoever else, the other partners.
Yeah, I mean, we can include it in the minutes, and that way we can
a separate recommendation.
Yeah, have that on
a
record.
little cleaner.
Okay. That's it.
Do you have any questions for staff? Okay.
I'm well done, thank you.
Okay, I do have a few. In the staff report, the parking demand was estimated to be 36 spaces based on 2 spaces for 1,000 square feet, or I guess it was 3 spaces for 1,000 square feet. That might be it seems to me that might be appropriate for a clothing store, but here we're dealing with a theater that can seat over 300 people. Did you make any attempt to adjust a parking space estimate for the fact we're dealing with a theater here instead of some other kind of commercial establishment?
So I think it might be helpful to have a little bit of the background context. When we did the parking management plan for the rail yard, we had done some separate parking analyses for, again, build out of the master plan, so that unlike kind of this individual project review that you typically do with other projects, we set some blended parking rate thresholds within the master plan, which is different than what we have in our development code. So the 3 per thousand, when you look at it sort of in the background work that was done, takes the fact that we're going to have a theater and offices and other commercial uses and blends that rate together to come up with that number. So although it may seem like it doesn't exactly fit the theater use, it's assuming that the parking will be shared and that the uses will all be kind of working together as part of a mixed downtown area.
Okay. Doesn't that also mean that future developments, as we fill out that phase of the rail yard, will need to have below actually require fewer than 3 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet?
So the way that it's structured in the parking management plan now is that it sort of puts the burden on the future projects that come in. So first person in gets the benefit of the parking that's been constructed. It's a pretty easy process. As more uses start to get approved and constructed and that parking capacity gets used up, then there's an option within the parking management plan that says, go do a survey of parking to figure out how the parking's being used and how your use would integrate within that portion of the parking district.
It's also important to recognize that a theater in particular is a good partner with other kinds of uses because of the timing. So the theater is, at 6 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, it's pretty full. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it may have 0 parking if there's no matinee going on. And so at the time when, for example, retail tends to be more active, so there are some times when there's overlap, but one of the reasons that one loves theaters in the downtown mix is because you can stagger the parking a little bit. It doesn't account for 300 spaces, I grant you, but it is something that if you did a parking study of a mixed-use project, you would be weighing that shared parking concept.
Okay. What I'm thinking of when you say that is the building that we know is going to be next door, which has been estimated to require 100 parking spaces, and we're only providing 24 or 25 on-site parking spaces. So they come home at night the same time people are getting ready to go out to the theater, and we know for sure that's a concurrent demand for parking.
Well, in theory, the artist lofts should be housing artists where they can live and work in their same spot and not necessarily be, leaving to do all their work at the same kind of 8 to 5 work schedule that other people have. Not that was necessarily taken into consideration with that calculation, but I think as, each project comes in, we're doing this parking assessment because it's required in the parking master plan. It kind of gives us a check of where we're at with parking, but it does include other flexibilities so that when other uses are coming in, they can do parking surveys to figure out, one, if they're actually going to be generating the 3 per 1,000 need, and then also how parking's being used. I mean, it may not be at the capacity we assumed with the approvals.
So maybe we do end up with a lot of poor artists who qualify, can't afford a car, and they qualify for the affordable housing. That's rhetorical. Let me go on to something else. I want to touch on lighting in the alleyway again. I asked the applicant about it. In approving this, from staff's point of view, is there any impediment to later adding lighting to the alleyway on the theater side of the alley? I mean, what do you call it? Ornamental lighting, historical faux lighting?
So in the rail yard streetscape plan, the festoon lighting, which is sort of the little hanging ball lights that a lot of people see in more typical alley walkways to kind of enliven spaces, is something that's encouraged. And when we were doing the widths for the alley and kind of looking at how the streetscape would lay out, we had many conversations with the fire district about, could you get a fire truck in there and how high would the lights have to be and things like that. And so one of the thoughts is that, as the artist lofts are constructed and the theater's constructed, assuming it's approved, then the programming of that space would also be looked at. And so there is anticipation that the artists would want to use that space for, art type events, that the SIGs would want to use that for art type events. I mean, there's a lot of possibility that we didn't program in, knowing that you kind of needed the uses there to figure out how best that space could be utilized. But the overhead lighting is something that was specifically called out in the streetscape plan to encourage kind of that full use of the space.
Okay, thank you. Now I want to ask some questions whether the extent to which the town reserves authority to do things after an approval. If we approve this, the town could come in later, and if they felt that the trash enclosure was too smelly, it could require some kind of odor control. Is that correct? Do we know?
Yeah, I mean, we could require it to be picked up more frequently, which tends to be the case that if for whatever reason they were generating, larger volumes of garbage than they thought, or because of the location of it. I mean, it is on the north side of the building, so it's not going to get the same amount of sun as something that's on the south side of the building. I will say that we haven't really had complaints about the one out in front of Marg's, and that's probably another example of one that's pretty prominent that you don't tend to smell when you walk by. So I don't think we have a ton of concern, but we could definitely, talk to them if there was an issue.
Okay. And then on the issue of alcohol, I assume staff saw the comment from Mr. Cockrum. Depending on whether there were alcohol problems, the town would have the authority to come in later and revise the limitations on alcohol use or impose limitations such as prohibiting alcohol use in the main theaters?
I think that would be fairly difficult for us to do because as part of the commission's action, you're allowing for beer and wine to be served. What I will say is if there was a problem, then usually the police department would have conversations about, what are some management methods that could be used. So it's more of a partnership discussion than it is about a regulatory approach. So, I mean, that's sort of where, yeah, or even ABC can get involved. We've used them before when we've had different concerns, and they've been a great resource. So I think that that's probably a good approach. From our experience in probably the last 5 years, the numbers of businesses that are interested in serving beer and wine has increased tenfold. Everything from bike shops to retail, I mean, you name it, they all would like that ability because the retail mindset is shifting from strictly go and buy a product to hang out for a while, enjoy an experience. And the town doesn't have regulations in place yet to say, no, we're not going to allow this. But at some point, we will likely bring back for discussion in front of commission and council some better land use definitions to kind of define, if you're going to have these types of uses, here's some parameters. Generally speaking, we have not had complaints about any of our beer and wine operators in town.
Can I ask a quick question about that? Or I can wait until you're done.
Go ahead.
Okay. We've seen in the coffee shops and bars, they have to have an enclosed area, but that is not the case. I just want to clarify for this, correct? They do not have to consume. Can they take it into the theater with them? Is that part of the license?
Yes, the ABC license that we currently have, and that's one of the reasons we don't have hard alcohol, is that we're allowed to allow people to come into the auditorium.
But people cannot leave the theater without, they cannot go outside without alcohol.
Okay, the last point I wanted to cover is I understand in the staff report we did refer to this theater as serving in part as a community use or a community benefit, and there's provisions about in the master plan about providing for civic uses and community uses. I understand in this situation with the theater, we're really talking about an amenity, and this is not meant to take the place of what's provided in the master plan when it speaks about things such as a community center, transit center, library, or things like that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Unless someone else has questions, I think we're ready to go into deliberation. You've been waiting. Okay, thank you.
Can I say one more thing about the ABC? The ABC will actually be looking at, they'll be putting their own guidelines on how much we can serve, as far as like right now we can't serve 22 ounce. We can only serve 16 ounce. So ABC will be taking a lot of the things that you're concerned about into consideration. They're very good at that.
Thank you, Mr. Sig.
Chair Zabriskie, if I could just, you asked about the community use, I want to clarify.
Yes.
In addition to the theater and as part of the development agreement, there's an agreement that for, I believe it's 5 years, possibly with an opener to 7, we can get 25,000 square feet in the balloon track for a community use of some sort, undefined at this point, for $1. So it's basically a give to the town. That's part of the development agreement. In addition, there's another 25,000 square feet next to it, making slightly more than an acre, that we have first right of refusal to at market rate. So we basically had over an acre of land that the town, if it's ready to and has an active use and is ready to move, can go ahead and take that as, have that as some community use, whether it's a whatever. So that's part of the development agreement. And that's completely separate from theater. It's totally different.
Okay. While we're still just on that topic, can you tell me where the smallest urban plaza is to the theater? There's a reference on page 4, figure 3, that shows a small urban plaza somewhat across the street. And I'm asking this question in part because a theater does seem conducive to outdoor gatherings. I'm not sure a 12-foot wide walkway provides enough space, but it also appears that across the street there is that asterisk or something.
What you probably can't read on the screen there is a really small note at the bottom that talks about how the graphics like this that are included to convey different ideas are illustrative to encourage development of these uses, but they weren't necessarily specified that they had to be in those specific locations, that they would be looked at with future development projects. So even right now, the trains that have been moved and relocated next to the balloon track are, kind of shown on there, but not exactly in the location that they ended up. And that will be a park type setting for people to enjoy. So the one that you're seeing that has a little green star on the western portion was one that was developed in concept when the movie theater was contemplated on that parcel. So it was a notion of doing kind of a open plaza with rail cars that could be moved on slides and some other way for the public to kind of understand the town's railroad history. But we don't ultimately know what will happen with that until a project's proposed on that parcel.
Thank you. Who wants to kick off deliberations?
I'll start it because I may actually have the least amount of issues, just based on or maybe Dave, I'm not sure, just based on the questions and comments. So I might be able to, get this to another place. I am overall very supportive of this. I think that the benefits outweigh any of the issues that have been raised. I think that the community members who came up and spoke during public comment, who addressed what a positive impact this family has made on the community in Tahoe City, as well as supporting nonprofits in the region and other groups, has already demonstrated itself tenfold. And I think that what is being provided is exceptional. I as a person from an architectural background, I definitely, got hung up on the north elevation and the east elevation, but I also acknowledge and kind of agree with what Jeff was saying. It's kind of the nature of the beast. These are uses that are not conducive to, stellar types of architecture, especially when they have budget constraints. I think that working with the Architectural Review Committee was a success. I think that the changes that were implemented are great and impressive, and I think the articulation that I'm looking at on this image that everyone else is looking at, I think are very strong, and that corner presence is very attractive. I think as it turns that corner, it's very engaging. I appreciated the comment about the canopy and why the marquee stands out the way it does. At first I didn't have an issue, and then I thought, wow, it really makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate that. The elements on the north side, the containment of the garbage, I think is successful. The side light on the kitchen as well. There was the comment, I think Susie had said she likes the posters on both walls. I could go either way. One thought I had, and I don't know if anyone agrees with this, would be, we could add a planter there, or a tree in a planter or something. Sig might push back on that as the landscape architect. But if we'd put another, planted piece, but I agree, I'm fine with the posters there. I think they could highlight stuff going on in the community. If it wasn't stuff that's being shown or it's going to be shown at the theater, I think it's attractive. I have some concerns about, at first I thought the lighting idea in the alley made sense, but now I'm sensitive to the artist loft residents, and I know having lived in a city in an apartment, I hated having, light coming into my apartment window, all night was just offensive. So I'm more concerned with impacting the quality of life for the residents of the artist lofts. I think what Danielle had said about the what is that called? Fairy light or the festoon lighting could be a nice addition. I do have issues about safety. I think that's something to be considered, but I also want to consider the quality of life of the residents. I think that the issue with the art, I feel like it's been addressed. I feel like since the town is offering this option of taking over the easement and the applicants are supportive of that, I think it's a win-win. I think that we're so close to solidifying this public arts master plan. I think the timing is perfect. The town has already set a precedent for pretty extensive support of public art, both in painted form and well as sculpture. I think that does set a precedent and I think given the community support for this project, might be an impetus for helping this move along. I'm open to discussing the conditions. I'm fine with the signage. And I thought there was one other question, but overall, I think I understand the issues with the parking, but I kind of support the whole idea that the people are going to come and they're going to park and they're going to spend, some time here. It's not just going to be the theater. Hopefully people will ride bikes from Glenshire in nicer weather and other places, and we'll start becoming a town that's less, car dependent. We'll see about that. There's something I think though about the signage being reviewed. If the change of the use, I think that's a good one. That the signage would be reviewed by the Planning Commission. But I think, I think that's all I have.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I do want to hear from Jerusha a little bit more on the cladding. I mean, you don't have to, but that is to say, I don't right now. I don't have a strong feeling on. I don't feel the applicant needs to provide cladding, so I'm curious to hear more.
if condition 18 remains as it is with no changes, then I think it's covered. But I know, I guess this will not go through additional architectural review or design review, correct? I mean, so who would review the murals or any sort of applications?
Well, if it's a mural, then the councils likely would establish a commission or committee, they haven't decided, through the Arts Master Plan process. So that's something that they haven't yet finalized, but is in discussion. If it's cladding, then that would be at a staff level review.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. I'm ready to approve the motion as presented by the staff with the conditions. I want to make some observations. Coming down Donner Pass Road from the north, coming down from 89 off I-80, that corner, the new roundabout where the theater will go, is in a sense, another gateway to the town. It's the entrance for many people to the town, even though they're going by Coburn Crossing. It's where they land down at the bottom of the hill. It's an important visual site. I think the theater's done as much as it can. This design, the architect has done much as can be done to make this presentable as a first impression to somebody landing at the bottom of the hill. But that puts, I think, more pressure on the design of the other nearby properties. Across the street in particular, I'm hoping we end up with something much more attractive that'll draw the eye across the street to that side, whether it's a plaza or just something that is much more architecturally interesting while still consistent with the theater. But that's not before us tonight. In terms of softening the view of the north side, planters or trees, it's a shame we don't have trees included, that there wasn't enough space. Anything in front of the building with a little bit of height would certainly provide a softening feature. That said, it looks like we're headed for a mural. In terms of the alleyway, I hadn't thought about Nikki's point, but I've had the same experience with lights shining into a window that I didn't like at night. On the other hand, maybe there's some kind of lighting other than festoon lighting. I have a feeling festoon lighting might shine into windows, but some kind of decorative lighting might serve two purposes by breaking up the wall a little bit and providing safe lighting for walking through. But the bottom line for me is I'm ready to approve this.
How do you feel about the poster things? Three sets of them or two?
I really like to look at movie posters to see what's coming.
So do I.
There's also the question of the illuminated posters in the front, so that's also as part.
I don't care for those. I'll say that straight up. I think it adds a lot of clutter, and we're trying to keep that transparent and inviting. And to me, it just, there's a lot going on the front, and I like the way it looks, but that just junks it up.
I agree. It wasn't part of what we were looking at, and I know we're not really supposed to bring the applicant up, but I agree. I like the transparency. I love the fact that this is kind of open to the public. You don't have to just be going to the movies, and the less that's like, I don't know, it seems like it like taped on, the better. I mean, yeah. So.
Yeah, I'd echo those sentiments as well.
You okay?
I withdraw my enthusiasm for the posters.
The ones on there was the ones on the wall though that had been offered to be removed. The north.
I think we want to have those on that wall. I mean, a little bit more feature. Personally, I like the idea of the pixelated CMUs because it just, in my mind, it does give a little bit of relief to that, that just overwhelming sense of mass on that wall. And it sounds like it's not anything that would prohibit it doesn't affect the artwork that could potentially come down the line. So I would prefer that for what it's worth.
It's hard to say. I hope it's not super trendy and over time, it doesn't fit the look, but I like it.
You can always paint it.
You can always paint it, yeah.
I'm fine with that. I prefer the mural, in art.
Oh, yeah. I prefer the mural too. And I feel like that, we're going to have I feel like that the community will find a way to make it happen. So, I'm supportive of it 100%. Even though there isn't, a vehicle in place per this discussion right now to make it happen, that's just in the meantime, if it takes 2, 3, 4 years or something like that for it to come to fruition, in the meantime, I just feel like this would visually break it up a little bit and at least give us some relief.
So I understand, are you saying you want to require it now, or you would just like to see it be considered in the future?
Well, it's my understanding that we can't really require anything, that we can only make recommendations to the town council. Is that correct, staff?
No, this is within your purview.
This is
The pixelated, that would be architecture you could do. It's the public art that we can't require them to pay for and do. This is not public art. This is part of the building, and they indicated it wouldn't increase costs very much.
How does everyone else feel about that?
I think it's a good interim if it takes a year or two to get something up there. I feel like it's a little bit more relief than the plain. I also want to echo the sentiment that the posters on the front felt cluttered, but I really like the ones on the side.
And you had me at the reuse of the siding.
There wasn't enough on the record for me to have a preference one way or the other. I don't think that part of the record was developed enough for me to form an opinion.
Okay, Nikki?
About the pixelated?
Yeah.
See, I'm fine with it. I think it provides some visual interest, and like I said, my hope is that those are painted, both of them, and the alley as well. And there's no shortage of phenomenal artists in this community, as we've seen. So it's like, bring it on. And maybe we get some sculpture on there too. So if it's only, you were talking, Jan, about the gateway, where it's only going to get better. And I think this is a great start. I think now, because I come from Glenshire, you got the transformer station, you got kind of dilapidated buildings on the right, and Mount Truckee, the big snow mountain.
Let me go back briefly to staff. Was there a cost associated with the pixelation or reservations about having it?
I don't believe that there was a cost implication. It was the same material, that just in different colors. I think the concern was just the busyness that the ARC brought up, and the I think that was the main.
And the compatibility of an unknown art piece. So there could be some visual coordination that you would want to have normally when you're planning sort of the architecture of the building with the future art piece, and without knowing that, if you leave it as a blank slate, you have a little more flexibility with your art versus trying to make the art fit in with the palette you were given with the architecture.
And I would say that the architect did bring up the point that this does make it a more horizontal form, whereas the design guidelines do talk more about doing vertical forms within the downtown extension.
One thing you could do in terms of a condition is leave it kind of open to the next step, maybe giving staff the leeway, because I think we will have the art master plan taken care of. By the time they're actually picking a material and building a building, we'll know if we've got an art master plan, if we've got a X number of dollars for an art project, and whether we're close to being able to move on a priority project. So we may actually, to Danielle's point, if the pixelated wall gets in the way of the art piece that ultimately wants to be there, I think we may be able to, timing-wise, may work out. So if you give the condition saying that's a preference, pending the discussion of the art or something like that. I'm not quite sure how to word it, but
Well, a preference subject to staff's discretion.
Something like that, yeah, pending the kind of decisions on possible public art, something to that effect, because we don't know that it will be X mural or Y piece of art.
And there's also options to look at other patterns, not just this particular pattern within the CMU.
Yeah, I would like to leave it to staff, and they're able to consult with experts and art experts better than we are sitting here. Better than just having us decide right here tonight.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, as long as it's in the minutes and that there's a recommendation to proceed with or consider it again.
So my idea is we express a preference, but it's subject to the discretion of the staff to make a subsequent decision on what to actually do.
You want to comment on that, Danielle?
I mean, you could definitely do that. It puts us in a little bit of an awkward position because what if the SIGs really want it and we say, well, we think, we don't know what the art pieces are, how does that discussion go moving forward?
And which do you prefer? The applicant? Out of the two, to revisit this, just...
I love the digital snowstorm.
I mean, I kind of agree with what many of you said, that, our end goal is for public art, but in the meantime, the pixelation does provide some more interesting, something to look at. Oh, sorry. I agree with what many commissioners said, that, we all desire public art. That's our goal. But in the meantime, because that would be a process, a year or two or more, that might be more interesting. And, as John said, that shouldn't really provide too much of an inhibition for future public art, since you can put something over, a glaze over it. So, we're fine with the pixelation, as SIG called it, a digital snowstorm. So it kind of fits with the region.
Thank you very much. So where does that leave us?
Motion. Does someone want to make a motion? Can staff put up the motion that was in the staff report? And we'll work off that.
Well, so I feel like we haven't come to a resolution on the pixelated versus non-pixelated, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're just kind of talking in circles about it.
Go pixelation.
Okay, Jeff, do you have a recommendation on how we would, word that so that, we're not creating a quagmire for staff when it comes down to it? I mean, how do we say it so that, ideally the goal is that we're going to have public art, short of that, we would like to have some sort of material, diversity that is not cost prohibitive.
Well, yeah, my putting staff in a quagmire would not be a new concept, but
I'm just looking for the win-win.
Yeah,
we may not get there.
No, I mean, I think I think we're recommending you stay with condition 18, which is really the fundamental condition that guarantees that something, either public art or something else, will happen. If it feels like there may be a majority or consensus that the pixelation would be a good interim step, go ahead and recommend that or require it as a condition, but perhaps give an out or a caveat saying that, if the public art, if the conclusion of the public art discussion, suggests against it, that there could be some leeway, something to that effect, so that from our perspective, it's pixelated. If nothing else happens, it's the snowstorm, whatever that is, at least in the interim. But because it's going to be a while before literally they're purchasing CMU blocks, I believe.
So we can just...
So that would be just a suggestion. I don't know if that's going to help or hurt.
That's my question, is this time, you talked about the preparation of construction documents. I mean, you're not going to be ordering materials until you're ready to go, building permit in hand, and...
So if we get the slide back up.
Yeah.
It's two different CMUs, and you could word it that the staff could decide between the digital snowstorm, or what's the other rendition we have? or these.
Right.
It's basically we're using two different colors, and they can make a recommendation if they wanted this or the digital snowstorm. That would make us very happy, because the way that gets assembled, we could determine once we go vertical.
Can you bring up the condition we're talking about?
This exact language isn't in a condition, but I could bring up 18.
18, yes. Ooh, that's the long version. Why isn't it just another or? Can we just do or pixelation?
Sure. I mean, that would be a simple one. It wouldn't require it though. So I guess that's the question: is if as a commission you want to see that. If you want to see that, I think you should be clear in saying, we think this is a good option because of the timing of when it would be constructed.
Okay. Let me go back to Dave. I understood you just most recently to indicate you wanted one or the other. In the event we didn't have artwork on the wall, you wanted to go pixelation.
My concern is that if we don't get the artwork on the wall for some reason or another, and I do believe that we will, that we have just a plain, bland, gray and tan CMU wall. That's my concern.
Okay, so we could do or pixelation.
I think then that would give them the option to not even offer us an easement, the town an easement, because that would fulfill that requirement.
Oh, okay. Well, then it's just a matter of wording, though, still. Just my wording's not the right one.
I think we keep the condition as is. We just need to decide whether we want what we approve to be pixelated or two colors of paint, or two colors of, painted CMU.
Because the mural's going to cover the entire wall, or?
Well, that's not a given, that's why I'm kind of a little. And then there was a comment from staff about the was it this architect or the architectural review committee saying something about the pixelated made it seem more horizontal. Did the ARC look at the pixelated? No,
that was a staff comment.
A staff, okay.
A staff and the architect. I think that was between us when we were discussing this option.
Well, and I think that was our reasoning for suggesting to leave it, in its more simple form without the pixelation, was that we don't know if it will be a mural. We don't know the size of the mural or if it will cover both portions. I mean, it could be a three-dimensional art piece. It could be many things. And you could create that unintended visual inconsistency between sort of this blocking that happens with the pixelation and an unknown art piece. Usually having a blank canvas provides much more flexibility.
Yeah, I'm good. I looked at the drawings with the SIGs. They showed me the pixelated. My gut reaction was, I don't really like that. I love art. Why aren't we looking at art? So I'm gonna go back to the blank canvas. I feel more comfortable with that. I agree. The compatibility. There's these unknowns, and that's where I'd like to go.
I feel the same way, Dave. I think we're going to end up with art on that wall one way or the other. I'm comfortable enough with that. I'm ready to take the motion as presented.
Or architectural cladding.
Oh, yes, or the cladding.
So does somebody want to make a motion?
Yes. Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Great.
Okay. That the commission adopt resolution number 2019-04, approving the project based on the recommended findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval, plus amendments to conditions 22 and 23 and the new development agreement condition. Do I need to read the bullet points? No? Okay.
I second.
And just to clarify, that includes that all of the display signs will be kept, all three of the display signs, and the 4 illuminated posters on the west elevation would be removed.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, should we take a vote?
Okay, let me try this again. Commissioner Tarnay? Aye. Vice Chair Hall?
Yes.
Chair Zabriskie?
Yes.
Commissioner Riley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gove?
Yes.
Oh, we finished that one.
And to note, the appeal period for this item ends on March 29th at 5 p.m.
And that the motion unanimously passed.
Yes. Thank you, audience, for staying with us. You're clapping because it's over. Okay. Okay, we now let's go on to staff reports, and I see that there are none. Okay, informational items.
We have just one related to next month's commission hearing. So the agenda currently, as of today, is a little bit in flux. We potentially have a temporary use permit for the Grays Crossing subdivision. This would be to allow for special events within the HOA. We have potentially a deck expansion project for 1882. That's the restaurant right on Bridge Street on the river. And then we may potentially have a permit process for Old Trestle Restaurant. That's a new restaurant proposed on West River Street. But again, all those are a little bit in flux as of today. We hope to know more shortly, and we'll work on getting out an agenda as soon as we can.
Thank you, Jenna. The next item concerns upcoming commission meetings and agenda items. I do have one item that I think would be timely to bring up, which is considering our public hearing procedures. We had talked about that a few months ago and about waiting until the newest commissioners had gone through a couple meetings to help get a sense of how much they might want to change or revise our existing procedures. I would like to put that on the agenda for the next meeting, subject to what the other commissioners think.
That sounds like a great idea to me.
I'm gone at the April meeting.
Does that mean you want us to put it on the April agenda or put it over until May?
I think it'd be nice to be part of the conversation, but don't feel like you have to.
Okay. How about if we...
May works for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's fine.
Yeah, May's fine.
We had tentatively scheduled it for May due to Commissioner Riley's known absence for April.
Okay, great.
I may not also be here at that meeting.
Oh.
You'll be missed.
Exactly. Okay, and just looking ahead to that, I'm working off of the public hearing information sheet that's on the website, and I know there's also a sort of code of civility that we have. I'm not focused so much on that, but I'm fine including it. And in terms of and I don't know of any other written guidelines that we have for planning commission meetings. I do want to include things both we want to treat as policy and then things we want to talk about in terms of practice without it having to be a policy or rule. Danielle, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say that we, so these procedures were done by a resolution, and what's interesting is that the council doesn't even have a resolution like this. So this was done by a prior commission at some point in time and carried over. So something that you could talk about is, one, do you want to keep it, or do you want to dissolve the resolution and make it go away and have something less formalized? I mean, there's a lot of flexibility within that. It's really just sort of up to you as a commission. But it would be good to at least establish some general parameters of how you want to operate, like the things we had talked about before, such as do you want to end by 10 o'clock or whatever those parameters are.
Right, and whether that should be a policy or a practice. Recesses, should we be taking a recess at a particular time? Questioning applicants after comments normally close. I know we had an instance where someone came in to comment late and there was some concern this would be a slippery slope and be the end of all society as we know it. That might be worth visiting.
I could speak to that.
And then and then already we deviate from it in terms of the order in which we have people speak. And so we should address that one item. And then tonight we had examples of of questioning of the audience after the comment period had closed. So those are all things that
And I apologize for not following the format that you specified. You were saying ask staff or them, applicant first, and I totally missed that, so I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean,
too.
it'd
Sorry.
be nice to get through these meetings as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible. Okay, so we'll put it on for May. Do you need any more guidance? Is it just enough to say we'll be discussing it? Okay, is there anything left on our, we can,
Commission member reports.
Oh, commission member reports, yes, thank you. Are there any reports from any of the commissioners? Any updates on activities?
I've done lots of stuff.
How about the Vision 2020? Do we have any?
To do that, I'm going to start. I went February 26th Town Council, February 27th HPAC. I met with Amanda Wybush, previous planning commissioner. I went to the GPAC meeting February 28th. I met with Anna Klovstad. I went to the Planning Commissioner Academy. So awesome. I loved it so much. It was really great. I met with Shauna from Mountain Housing Council on March 9th. I talked with Stephanie Oliveri March 10th. I went to Good Morning Truckee March 12th. Let's see. Also I did a quick site visit to the West End Coffee site myself with a noise monitor to see how quiet or loud it is. Evidently when a bird squawks, it goes way up to 70 decibels. I went to Town Council meeting March 12th. HPAC again, March 13th. What is that? Oh, I did meet with Molly Hagar as well, March 13th, before we knew that it was removed from the thing. And that's it. Phew, I'm done. Thanks.
Anyone else?
I also attended the planning commissioner convention thing. It was very informative and very interesting, and I did enjoy it. I spoke with Jessica Abrams before the last planning commission to try to clear the way for the Grace Crossing thing and articulate my viewpoint on that. Was the applicant for the currently withdrawn West End Coffee Pub reached out to me via email, and we exchanged trying to coordinate a time to discuss her project on the phone, but then that before we actually had a time to speak, that was withdrawn. And I attended the town workshop the other night, the Envision 2040, and spoke with several members of the community and participated in the interactive town things. The end.
I forgot to mention, I've been attending the GPAC meetings for the Planning Commission.
I attended the GPAC meeting. I had to leave early because we had a Tahoe Quarterly event in Reno for Brendan. I went to the general plan update meeting last week downtown, which it's fun to go to the meetings downtown. I met with Molly Hagar from the West End TAP before we knew it was withdrawn. And then I met with my town council appointer, Dave Polivy, and we talked about Grays, and I explained where I was coming from during our planning commission meeting. And it sounds like that, I mean, it seems like it's gone in a positive direction.
Okay. Gosh, I don't have anything to report. What I omitted to say earlier that I wanted to mention, at least to staff, having the involvement of the volunteer architects, I think is really helpful. I really appreciate the kind of advice they provide us. Okay, if that's it, meeting's adjourned.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you too.